Wilson is out seeing a movie tonight. I didn't ask him what movie he was seeing. How's that?
I don't care. The last movie I went out to see was Ford v Ferrari, which was a few years ago, and the last one before that was the Lone Ranger, in which I decided that Hollywood does not deserve my money anymore.
I'm trying to remember the last movie I went out and saw. It's probably about at least 15 years ago. It may have been The Hulk. That was
a long time ago.
That was the last Marvel movie. I know that was the last Marvel movie I saw in the theaters. That might have been the last movie. When were the Lord of the Rings movies? Were they before or after the Hulk? Because I saw all three of those in the theater.
Before? Can't remember.
I can't either. But it's been a long time. I was just never one for going to the movies a lot. So
the last Marvel movie I saw in the cinema was Iron Man 3.
Okay. I still haven't seen that one anywhere. I mean, on TV or anything. I think I watched Iron Man 1. I think I watched Iron Man 2, but I don't think I ever watched. I know I never watched 3, but I think I saw 2.
Sometimes I see the Marvel movies on the scheduling, and it's, do I want to watch this? Nah.
Huh. What was the first movie I saw in the theaters? It may have been Sherlock Holmes's Smarter Brother.
It was either Ghostbusters 2 or Back to the Future 3.
Sherlock Holmes's Smarter Brother was a what was his name?
Mycroft.
Who played Willy Wonka?
Gene Wilder?
Gene Wilder. It was a Gene Wilder, Marty Feldman movie.
Really?
Yeah, from the 70s. and the most memorable part of me as a kid, and it was supposed to be about, I forget his name. It wasn't Mycroft. They made up the character. Sherlock Holmes' Smarter Brother, and the idea was he thought he was smart. But somehow, behind the scenes, Sherlock Holmes was saving him time after time. But the most memorable part of the movie for me as a kid was there was a scene where they were in a death trap. And the death trap was they were in this little, tiny, narrow room with a big, huge, body-sized buzzsaw coming right down the middle. And like Sherlock Holmes' Smarter Brother was, talking to Marty Feldman, his Watson, is like, if we do this and if we scrunch ourselves up against the wall, we have just enough clearance to survive that. And they did. They scrunched up against the wall. The blade went by. Then as they escaped the trap, it had cut off the back of their pants. So as they were walking away, their bare butts were showing. That was like the funniest thing in the world. It's weekend time, yeah. Condor Man was my first. I think that was it. Some bird-themed superhero movie that must have been a bomb. Oh, I vaguely remember something like that. It was a comedy with...
Was that directed by Mel Brooks?
No, I'm thinking of one of the Wayans brothers ones. Oh. Wasn't there one named Condor? Or Condor? Something like that. Birdman, something.
But that Sherlock Holmes, was it directed by Mel Brooks?
I don't think it was, but I don't remember.
Sounds like something that Mel Brooks would do, but I don't remember.
It was during Mel Brooks's heyday with two of his guys, but I don't think it was actually a Mel Brooks movie, if memory serves. But, like I said, it's one of those movies that's been forgotten, so I don't really remember. Nobody ever mentions it.
Yeah, I keep watching. Blazing Saddles keeps getting rerun around here, but I never watch History of the World Part 1 anymore.
The other one that was sort of like it, once again, in that Mel Brooks comedy genre from, I think, the late 70s, there was one called The Last Remake of Beau Geste. I know that one had Marty Feldman in it, and I think maybe Michael York. And it was, once again, that same sort of Mel Brooks type comedy, but I don't think it was Mel Brooks. And that one I think it ran on HBO a lot in the late 70s. And I saw that one many times. Oh, Condor Man. was 1981 by Disney. Oh, Blank Man. That may have been the one I was thinking of with. So yeah, Condor Man much earlier.
When you see Michael York doing a comedy, doesn't it look like they're making fun of Michael York?
Yeah, and we were talking about the Adventures of Sherlock Holmes' Smarter Brother because I think that was the first movie I ever saw in the theaters. I'm glad someone else remembers it. it's not
And I said mine was either Ghostbusters 2 or Back to the Future 3. I can't remember exactly what.
yeah.
May have been Ghostbusters 2. I remember people said Ghostbusters 2, you see the critics, they say Ghostbusters 2 didn't offer anything new. And as a kid, I didn't care. I was under 10. And when I seen Ghostbusters, then Ghostbusters 2 is more of the same, they said. So, I mean, I'm as a kid, I can kind of I was 9 or 10, and I could kind of rationalize it because yeah, it's their job. I mean, they're the Ghostbusters, so they hunt ghosts, and in the second movie they hunt ghosts. It makes sense that the plot's the same. What do you want to do? Deliver pizzas?
I vaguely remember Ghostbusters too. That's where the cats and dogs sleeping together line is from, right?
No, that's for the first one.
That is from the first one. Okay, so Ghostbusters 2 didn't have many memorable lines.
No,
I thought that was one of them, but it wasn't.
The second one is where they make fun of the Ghostbusters, but they have that guy was funny. What was his name? I can never remember the guy's name, but the guy is the museum curator, and the ghost is in a painting. So
I don't remember. It's been too
when
long.
the Ghostbusters break into the museum, I say, "Don't you know who this is? He's Vigo. You are the buzzing of flies to him." And he's like the funniest thing in the movie. What's the guy's name? Let me look it up because I never remember the guy's name.
And it looks like The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes' Smarter Brother was directed by Gene Wilder. Look at that.
Peter McNichol. I never remember the guy's name.
Peter McNichol.
But yeah, he makes the line, "He's Vigo. You were like the buzzing of flies to him." Of course, to me, every American actor who does an accent is immediately funny. So, which just kind of explains why I like Jewish humor.
Of course, I am French. Why do you think I have this outrageous accent? Monty Python.
Sarah.
How would they translate that to Portuguese?
It doesn't matter because we use subtitles, so we listen to the funny accent. Okay, Sarah. That was the first movie famous.
Yeah,
what was it? Also forgot that.
Like I said, that was one of I was saying one of the Mel Brooks movies that Mel Brooks had nothing to do. It was in the late 70s that like Mel Brooks movies became its own sort of comedy genre, even though he wasn't involved with them.
Yeah,
and that was kind of one of them. And like I said, the last remake of Beau Geste was another one that was along those lines. And did you know, I was just before I came on here, a golden age artist died today.
Oh,
at
dang.
101.
Oh. 101. That was...
Only if you remember this book that I got a couple of years ago will you know who it is, because Lily Renee.
Renee?
I had never heard of her before I stumbled on this book somewhere, which is Trina Robbins discuss. She drew comics from 1943 to 1947, and she this is sort of a bio comic of her, because at 14, during World War II, what was it, 1940, she had to flee Austria. Her parents sent her to England. Yep, Lily Renee. 101. It's like, wow. I must have discovered her I must have read something back when she was like turning 100 or something like that, because it was only recently that I had heard of her. I've never, she stopped drawing. She only drew comics for those 4 years. So, 43 to 47. She did some of the best and most iconic Planet comic covers. Yeah, she did some nice stuff. There, I have what there's a site I follow called what is this? The Daily Cartoonist, that has a piece on her that gathers a bunch of other pieces from her. Let me see if I can pull this out.
Oh, she worked on Senorita Rio? That's funny.
Let me pull that out, see if I can share my screen. There we go. Oh, that's the wrong thing. I picked the wrong thing. Hold on. Let me stop screen share. How come it didn't give me the right thing?
Yeah, you selected the Reed Ripper slab.
Yeah, that was a Reed Ripper slab. Here we go. She did this one here, Kitty. And Abbott and Costello. Let's go up.
That looks pretty good.
There's Planet Comics and a Fight Comics.
Yeah, that's the Senorita Rio strip.
There's this one here, some interiors from her. June Martin. And there she is there. But yeah, she died. Her family just announced she died. So, But this is a pretty interesting story, because she went from, her parents sent her to England, and they eventually managed to escape to the U.S. themselves. But she was in England, and it wasn't always easy for these teenage girls in England. She was like taken advantage of by some English woman who wanted a servant, and just like worked her. So let's see. Kinder Transport, that's 1939. That's when they went all. Then she was in London. I think she was in London, and then she went to Leeds. These are all the chapter headings. Then she got smuggled out of England. She had to kind of the Blitz. She was there for the Blitz too. Enemy. Oh, I didn't realize too that in May 1940, England sent about 30,000 enemy aliens to internment camps. So they did the same thing, at least briefly. They did the same thing with Austrians and Germans in England that we in the United States did to the Japanese.
And then they had to figure out which ones were Jewish.
Yeah. So eventually, her cousin got her out of the country and got her to the U.S., where she eventually drew comics. Yeah, 101 years. That's crazy. Imagine all the stuff you've seen in a. But it's named Lily Renee Escape Artist, and it's written by Trina Robbins and drawn by Ann Timmons and M-O-O-H. Mo-O. I guess that's two-letter last name and first name. But good little book if you want a little biography of Lily Renee, who died today. Like Trina Robbins, I think, got her back into. I think Trina Robbins was one who brought her comics career to the forefront, so people know who he is. Thanks for the tip, Jared. We'll check it out. Yeah, it's good stuff.
Although when you said 101, I was afraid that Hal Jeffy had died. Hal Jeffy's 101.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Man. Hal Jeffy's the last. Hal Jeffy and Don Perlin are like the last guys.
Wow.
From the Golden Age.
Yeah.
Man, I can't believe the amount of knowledge we're losing. Every time we're complaining about what Stan Lee didn't, and everybody around him is already dead or dying. And the other day I was thinking, man, we should ask Larry Lieber the truth. But then again, do you really want to grill a 90-year-old about his dead brother?
Yeah, that's just it. That he wouldn't necessarily know.
Well, but he could confirm what he actually wrote,
Right,
because he
right.
never did. Did you write? Did you write this,
Uh-huh.
this? Can you point it out? He
If
probably
he
doesn't
even
remember
if he
because it
even
was,
remembers, yeah.
yeah. The guys who are there are guys who are art spotters, and then there are guys who are writing spotters. Those are harder to come by
Yeah.
because discovering pinpointing a writing style without knowing who did it, just from looking at it, it's
It's
not as
tough.
easy. Yeah, but I think there are a few things that you can point out.
They,
Uh, there
not
are.
not in comic books, but I know in prose they've got computer programs to help them figure out writing styles.
Mhm,
In terms of they can run the prose through a program that detects patterns, how many
mhm.
times words are used, where words are used in conjunction with each other. But as far as I know, none of that has been done in comics.
No, I know that the guys in the Grand Comics database, there's a couple of them where they're on blogs like Nick Caputo,
Right.
and they usually go through the R. They find out how many A's and how many R's and how many G's and how many H's.
Right. Because you
You
do
know,
that stuff by habit.
yeah, but it's not easy because that's easy, and sometimes even be- because the it's a sound effect.
Right.
The artist can change it if he wants to.
Right. Right. Sometimes the
Uh,
letterer changes it.
yeah, but there are a couple of things that the biggest thing that I would love to figure is it's the monster stories at Marvel during before Stan started using credits,
Hmm.
because they're all marked in the Grand Comics database as potentially Stan Lee and Larry Lieber, and
So
you
who
should
knows which one did which?
well, the idea was that Stan it was plotted by Stan and written by and dialogue by Larry. Then they started. There were a few times when Larry Lieber started trying to tell people that he was doing full scripts,
Ah,
and it's not impossible, because the when they say plotter, Stan would probably meet with Larry. In the next story, the monster's going to do this. Okay,
right.
whatever. Like when he said, like what he said he did with Kirby,
Yeah.
but there are probably a few. There, I believe there's hidden Don Rico material at pre-Marvel
Mm, okay.
and Tom Gill. There's got to be.
Yeah, because with no credits, there has to be.
It's
If
not
those
like,
guys were doing some writing there and
yeah,
there were no
because
credits and they're not credited with much, then they
that
have to be.
if Stan Lee wrote it, he signed it. So
Right.
when he decided to write, but did he just give everything to Larry in 1958? I don't buy it.
Yeah.
Maybe by
And,
1960, 61, but not in 58.
and I haven't yet read Trotz and Bonnie hardcover yet that I got for my
Mm.
birthday. It's still in the to be read pile.
Mm. What's Roots and Bonnie?
It's it's a strip from National Lampoon.
Hmm.
Uh see? Where is it? And I think I got this, like I said, it was on my it looks sort of like a sweet, innocent, old time comic,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not. It's a National Lampoon comic, told full of sexual situations and stuff,
Mm-hmm.
by a woman named Shari Flanagan. I think it's my friend Bunch who swears by. I wouldn't have a National Lampoon comic on my Amazon wish list unless my friend Bunch recommended it. I don't actually remember him recommending it. It's been on there for a little while, but unless he recommended it, it wouldn't be on there. So I figure he told me it was coming out. It was really good. I should get it. So got it for my birthday, but haven't read it yet. But speaking of old time comics, one of the things I got this week is the Detective Comics 57 of 27 facsimile edition.
Hmm. Okay, so never mind the Batman story. Tell me about the other strips.
$7 too. But the Batman story, which the other strips were kind of, first of all, it's not as childish as later comics were.
Yeah, but we knew that.
But I never really thought about it with Detective Comics 27. It wasn't like pre-code horror or anything like that. But it really was written fairly smartly, even if they're just simple 6-page stories. And
Sure.
we get, first thing right after Batman is Tenderfoot, a little 1-page comedy one. And then we get Speed Saunders, ace investigator of the kill. Lots of foreigners in this one too. Now that I said, and the Killers of Kurdistan. So this one, once again, this is kind of a Dick Tracy thing.
Yeah, Speed Saunders, I think, goes back to Detective Number 1, but it wasn't as famous as Sam Bradley.
Okay, they go back to, and actual blood in it too. They showed a couple of dead bodies.
Ooh, okay.
Which you wouldn't get post. So it wasn't really childish.
No, you know what I think it turned? Let me check it. So the Superman radio show starts in 1940. So Detective 27 is 1939.
It's not newsprint because newsprint doesn't exist anymore, but it's an uncoded paper, so it's not glossy.
Right. So in 1939, they could still do stuff in comics without attracting attention. Then the Superman radio show starts, and then everybody knows what Superman is.
And
they can tell me, oh, Action Comics number 1 sold 1 million copies. Doesn't matter. It's still comics. It's the radio show that makes 20 million people aware of the character and makes them aware of the comic. So at that point, with a radio show, all the comics have to be sanitized because now they're on the radio.
Next, we get Buck Marshall, Range Detective by H. Fleming. Like all the stuff is signed too, which is done in black and red.
Yeah,
it's only 2 colors, black and red. So that was weird. There's a couple of them done like this.
That was normal for DC at the time, and you'll see the same thing in Action Comics and in New Fun Comics.
Yeah, but Cowboy Story.
They were connected to the Donenfeld knew some of the newspaper guys because he had newspaper strips in his early comics, and they did that thing. I always forget that thing. 1930s newspaper strip funny. Yeah, that's gonna help.
Yeah, but what's weird too is his shirt was all done as an overlay, as a surprint.
Yeah,
it's drawn in red. I wouldn't even think they did that way back in 1939.
Here's the funny thing.
That's an extra step.
It is, but it's the beginning. Everybody's trying stuff, and then everything coalesces in what's easier to do. But before that, everybody's trying new stuff. So yeah, you see overlays in
Spy by Siegel and Schuster.
Yep. The character's name was Bart Regan or Bart Rogan, something like that.
Let's see. Once again, another dead body down there.
Yeah.
Whoops.
Yeah, the character was Bart, but they just called the strip Spy. But the character's name was Bart Regan.
Bart summons a doctor. Where's his? Yeah, Regan. Regan.
Mm-hmm.
But you know what? I was just noticing too. Even after 27 issues, these really have a lot more to do with comic strip storytelling than comic book storytelling. When I read in the Mort Meskin book that the 2 guys that everybody looked at whenever their comics came out were Jack Kirby and Mort Meskin. Those are the 2 guys who, when they saw a new issue, everybody went in there and saw they were the 2 innovators.
Right.
And
but in 1939, Kirby and Meskin don't exist yet.
Yeah, there's certainly no innovation going on in the artwork here. It's kind of interesting.
No, but you were mentioning the overlay. That
Horror Mike, that is not newsprint. Newsprint does not exist. That's an uncoded paper. There's a difference.
yeah,
Newsprint as we knew it from the 70s does not exist. If we had that paper now, there's no printers that can print on it.
yeah, not even
Gone
with
through
daily
this many
newspapers.
times.
Daily
All,
newspapers that use that uncoded nowadays.
newspapers don't even use newsprint anymore. It's just an uncoded paper. It's not always even the cheapest. So I know Alterna Comics sells themselves as newsprint, but it's not. That's the same paper this is using right here, in case you wanna.
Yeah,
It's just
and those prices they do 150, 195, they're losing money on it.
yeah.
The guy who owns that thing, he has a regular job. He uses the comics business as a sideline, but he's not making money on it.
Yeah,
Not at 195.
the dream of newsprint is dead. There is no such thing as cheap newsprint anymore. Doesn't exist. It's just usually coded or uncoded paper, and all glossy paper is coded.
Mm.
And sometimes it costs extra to print on the uncoded paper, depending on what machines they got.
Yeah, but the biggest influence on DC at the time might be Mud and Jeff.
Yeah. Did you see the paper on the Frank Miller Presents Ash Can? I liked it a lot. No, I did not see that paper. But like the problem with his uncoded paper is also too it can turn yellow on you fairly quickly. I bought those Jack Kirby Fourth World omnibuses that were on uncoded paper. I sold them, but after about 5 years, they were turning yellow, and they're not. They're just so Detective Comics uses uncoded paper. Yes, you'll like it. It uses uncoded paper. No, whoops. Got my glasses stuck in my hair. Yeah. Uncoded paper is basically what people call newsprint today, but it's not really. But there's no. It's got a matte. It doesn't even have a matte finish. It's got no finish because it's uncoded. But let's see after. Oh, and speaking of this spy, this could have been from a Siegel and Schuster newspaper strip because every panel is numbered. In the bottom corner,
was a newspaper strip. Spy was a long-running strip at DC Comics before Superman. But they created their comics as newspaper strips because they might sell them as newspaper strips.
Okay, so that's what they time for a buzz cut. Zoom.
Yeah, I always have a buzz cut when I get a haircut. Probably next week I'm going to get a buzz cut.
Good evening, Tat. Yeah, definitely check that out. It's on uncoded paper.
I haven't seen a Tat in a while. He still makes videos every once in a while, but
yeah.
But I haven't seen him in a while. How are you doing? Because Tat is also a Portuguese descendant.
Yeah.
We had a few in California.
I see his, what does he do? He draws on comic boxes, too.
Mm-hmm.
He makes his own custom art boxes. Tats Comics. Follow his channel. But yeah, it was Spy. Like, very comics. Man, Kirby and Meskin must have hit like a bolt of lightning because this is all very comic strippy. It's very dull artwork wise. Good evening, Gus.
Yeah,
we're vacation. Okay.
Yeah, we're gonna put the Mind the Comics channel is gonna have our usual Portuguese language stream next week. Oh. You're welcome to come by and not understand anything we say. We're still. I think we finally have a guest for next week because it's August, which means that everybody in Portugal is on vacation.
Very bright colors in Spy too.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe bright colors throughout the book. Probably because the line screens are so much denser now. But once again, I wonder how coloring was done on this book. Like, because I still don't know if DC used color guides or not.
At the time?
Yeah, I don't know. Or they just sent him to the separator, and it was up to the separator to.
Might have been up to the separator. I don't think they.
Yeah, you sound very intelligent that way, Paulo. We can't understand that.
Well, I am drinking my third whiskey of the night. My
All right.
my sister's boyfriend was in my parents' house, so we had dinner, and then I had a couple of whiskeys after that. So now I'm back. I'm when I went home, I got my third whiskey of the week. So let's try to sound less intelligent.
And next comes The Crimson Avenger by Jim Chambers.
Yeah,
I've heard of. He's.
Mm-hmm. It still looks like the Shadow there. He only gets into a superhero costume probably in a couple of months. I think it was 38, Detective 30.
He was Batman the only new character in this issue?
And 27, yeah. All the other characters are already existed.
Oh, okay. See, I didn't even know that. But I'm trying. In reading this, I was trying to figure out, what made Batman successful compared to the other ones, and you really don't know.
But they knew Batman. They had high confidence in Batman because they put him on the cover and as the opening strip.
Yeah, but I gotta say, the Crimson Avenger's awful red cape blob thing probably held him back too. It's like visually he just wasn't that. I like the blue hat, but the poncho cape just wasn't working.
Right. He's supposed to look like the Shadow, but he doesn't.
Yeah, he's supposed to look like the Shadow, but he's got a bright red poncho. I mean, come on. That's just not working. A nice little, text piece to get those postage rates cheaper. Do you know that's why they did that?
Mm-hmm.
For those of you who don't know, early comics used to, in order to what is the word I'm working for? In order to not apply, in order to get accepted for third class postage, which was cheaper to mail these, they had to have a certain amount of text pages, which was like 2 or 4. How much was the look of Batman initially? Yeah. How much of it? Yeah. I mean, he doesn't look like the Batman we know today. There's him. But he certainly looked cooler than the Crimson Avenger.
Yeah.
They have all the original ads in there, Jared? They do. The facsimiles all have the original. Where's an ad page? Stamp collector's corner. Or at least how would I know if these are the original ads? But they appear to be vintage, at least.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have a couple of Millennium editions, and I have All Star Comics #3, but I don't remember if it has the original ads.
Yeah, I don't think. Oh, yeah, there's some ads for some other. Other DC stuff at the time, or whatever this company was called.
You see, All American Comics had a DC logo, but it wasn't a DC comic. It was an All American comic.
That's because there were 3 companies, weren't there, that eventually became DC.
One was the one that Donenfeld stole from Malcolm Wheeler Nicholson.
Right.
The other one was Donenfeld and Leibowitz.
Yeah.
Which was National Periodical. So because Detective Comics was the one that he stole from Malcolm Wheeler Nicholson.
Right.
National Allied Comics was the one that he founded to publish Action Comics. And that was Donenfeld and Leibowitz. And All American Comics was Max Gaines.
Okay. And
Max Gaines was also part of the, let's call it, mobster circle, because it was in circulation. He was the one that figured out, let's see what happens if he had these promotional comics. Let's see what happens if we put a price tag on them. And he was the one that put a sticker with a 10-cent tag on them back in 1933.
Okay.
They sold, and I bet I bet that he didn't pay a single cent of that to the producers. He just pocketed it all.
Nope. Next in line we have Bruce Nelson by Tom Hickey.
Bruce Nelson. What was the Bruce Nelson strip about?
Bruce Nelson. Let's see which one. Another sort of Dick Tracy strip. Guy in a blue suit and a hat solving a crime, which has to do with magic.
It's the funny thing. Donenfeld didn't really care about science fiction because Kirby was inspired by Flash Gordon,
right?
But the stuff and there were a couple of science fiction strips, and Siegel and Chister had one. You know, Federal Man started as a science fiction strip before it became Federal Man. But the majority of copycats that DC had were either humor or Dick Tracy, because there are a lot of spies/detectives.
I guess he was sticking to that Detective Comics title and just going with all Dick Tracy ripoffs.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. Did I skip one? No, I didn't. Next, we come this weird.
Look at New Fun, and New Fun was the comic that he had for the longest time.
Yeah,
it's the same thing. There are humor strips mixed in with detective/spy strips.
Huh.
And Federal Man is in there as well, but you know, it doesn't really go for the crazy sci-fi stuff. I think that Goodman was more open to it.
Now they explicitly exclude comics from Media Mail. Pisses me off. They do.
But if they have an ISBN, if they have an ISBN, they can go through, because the ISBNs are for books, not for periodicals.
Right. The next story is The Mysterious Dr. Fu Manchu by Sax Rohmer. I can't imagine they paid him for this.
They might have. Wheeler Nicholson had a habit of doing straight adaptations.
Okay. This is, it's done sort of Prince Valiant, once again, comic strip influence. It's done sort of Prince Valiant style, with the text down below and just illustrations. No word balloons, no captions.
So there are probably a couple of things that he had to pay for, that Donenfeld knew he had to pay for.
There's an ugly Fu Manchu, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, that thing looks like an alien. It doesn't.
Yeah.
You know, there's one thing that's Yellow Peril. That thing looks like but that thing looks like an alien.
Yep.
But then again, Alan Moore in League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, when he uses Fu Manchu, he is an alien. They don't say outright he's an alien, but in League of Extraordinary Gentlemen Volume 2, when they go to Limehouse and they focus on Fu Manchu, and he has the same eyes as the Martians.
Wow.
Huh. So they're implying that he's an alien plant. But League of Extraordinary Gentlemen is kind of a Walt Newton comic, so the real Fu Manchu would have been related to Sherlock Holmes.
Sherlock Holmes. I hope they put that in my pull box. I hope you pre-ordered it. I don't think my shop had any shelf copies of this. Probably because it's an $8 or $7 facsimile.
I might go to my shop and pick it up. I mean, I don't have an Action Comics #1. I know I have an All-Star Comics, and I have the Adventure Comics with the first appearance of Supergirl. Or is it the first appearance of the Legion? Those are Millennium editions. Yeah. Back in when they did the Millennium editions.
Right, I remember those.
I don't have an Action Comics #1 of the Millennium edition, but I'd like to have a Detective 27.
Yeah, this one's cool. Flatfoot Flanagan, a one-page Irish cop comedy.
Yeah, because all cops are Irish.
Yep. Then we get another one of these, which I for a moment thought they had an actual story about a Chinese person here. Once again, this one is red and black only. But it's Cosmo, the Phantom of Disguise, illustrated by Sven Elvin. And
Sven Elvin, that name looks like it was made up.
Who knows? I'm just amazed each story has credits, but I guess that's because they're going for the comic strip thing. Each story has a little logo, and this is in, and all the other characters are Chinese, but they're not, Fu Manchu Chinese. They're actual human beings. And since it's all red and black, they don't have to color them bright yellow. But just a story about him being a detective, this master of disguise, as he goes undercover in the Chinese community to fight crime.
Oh, Sven Elvin is a real name. So
Ah,
according to the Grand Comics database, born in Stockholm, Sweden, July 17th, 1897. Born Hubert. No. That's not his real name. It
ah.
was Sven Elvin was born Hubert Frickholm. He legally adopted his name Sven Elvin after immigrating to the U.S. Date unknown. He was going by Sven Elvin before comics. In
Ah.
1933, he illustrated a book called Unmentionables: A History of Lingerie. That's what I like to hear. All these guys were doing fringe stuff, almost porn. If it's the 1930s and you're working on a lingerie illustrations, you're working on porn, as far as other people are concerned.
And the next one is Plainclothes Pete by Alger. It's got a sort of gasoline alley look to it.
Yeah, Alger was a regular contributor of humor strips to DC at the time, because you'll find his work in every comic they put out.
Man, Robert Crumb must have been a fan of his. Because
Might have been.
I see some influence on Crumb in this stuff.
Let me see. So he probably has a. Okay, so he doesn't have much of a. Yeah. So real name Russell Cole.
I mean, just these two guys walking
Hmm.
looks like a little bit of Crumb.
Yeah, but there's a little bit of Mud and Jeff in there.
Yeah, yeah. Then the
Yeah, but
last
you
one.
can see where you see the crumb. I mean, they while walking, they kind of look like the Keep on Trucking
Yeah.
cartoon.
Mm-hmm. And there's a looseness to it and a fluidness. I mean, he's doing that same walk over here. Who
And I have
knows? Who knows?
Alger does not have a Wikipedia entry, and what's worse, I can't find an entry on.
An Irish cop, groundbreaking. Good to know. I'm working on a new shout out board and hopefully do some more box tops in a comic. Cool. You said Crumb, but I see Seagar from Popeye. Yeah, yeah, definitely some of that. And you're right. You're right. But Crumb must have said. I don't. I've never seen. Well, I've never watched many or read many interviews with Crumb to get who all his influences were. Besides
Mhm.
Mad Magazine, everybody's
Yeah,
influence was Mad Magazine of Crumb's age, but he probably was a Popeye fan too.
yeah, yeah. But
Right age for that.
let's try to remember Thimble Theater. So there's probably there's a lot of Mud and Jeff in there,
Mm-hmm.
and Alger was probably drinking from the same source.
Yeah.
And I can't believe that Alger does not have a Lambic entry, because Lambic is where they put all the cartoonists. Let me just check. No, because no. There's a Bill Alger and an Alger.
ALGER.
Yeah, let me see if he's under the real name. Although Russell Cole, are you here? No, Russell Cole. No, Russell Cole. Man, the guy was prolific. He did a lot of stuff for DC,
Yeah.
pre-superhero. But I don't really get why it doesn't have an entry here.
Oh wow, there's an ad on the back to get your own printing press. Have fun and earn extra money doing job work. Look at that.
Yeah, printing press, then call us so we can distribute the stuff.
Wow. Price only $2.98. How big is this printing press?
298 in 1939.
I have to imagine $2.98 wasn't that expensive even in 1939.
Okay, so let's see. So it's a 10-cent comic. Comics now are $4, so they're 40 times more. Yeah, it's a hundred less than $100. It's not a real printer. It looks like one of those mimeograph machines.
Yeah, it can't be. It must be a toy.
Okay, Damien said he had a printing press as a kid. Do you remember how much your parents paid for it, or did you pay for it yourself? Now is the time that Damien's going to say that he was selling all that stuff that they had you selling on those comic book heads in the 60s.
He knew jujitsu, had X-ray specs. He was. That just popped into my head, an idea for a comic. Have some superhero gain their superpowers by buying all the stuff out of the back of a comic from the ads.
Yeah, I bought the sea monkey, so now I have the powers of the sea monkey, the proportional strength of a sea monkey.
You can call up 1,000 troops. The power of many comic book ads. My X-ray specs. You can call on the power of giant door-sized Frankenstein. Rubber letters printed in an area about the size of a greeting card. That's probably what this is then.
Mm-hmm. So you can't do much with it.
Yeah.
But if it's a Mineo machine, you can print A4 pages, A4 paper.
Paulo is king of the sea people. The sea monkeys.
I am going to eat fish tomorrow. I also had fish today and yesterday. That's a good thing about living in a harbor town. You can have fish every day.
They should do a run of early, more fun comics with the Spectre and Dr. Fate. I know they got Dr. Fate archives, but I don't think they're, I don't know that a Dr. Fate facsimile edition would make them much money.
Dr. Fate debuts
and I did get
what?
Speaking of more fun, where is that? They put out a facsimile hardcover of New Fun. This is, I think, before it was More Fun. This is the first DC comic.
Yep, and everything in there looks like a comic strip.
Yes. And they put this out 1935, February.
Yeah, but why wouldn't? When you look back at the history of comics, why wouldn't they all look like comic strips? What else do they have?
Yeah, this came out in 2020, so you can get the very first DC comic in a giant oversized edition. And this also has uncoded.
But it's not oversized. That's real size. New Fun Comics was that size.
Oh, okay. Oversized. Yeah, this has got a real nice, good paper stock, uncoded. A little off-white. Well, that's a pretty. That's another facsimile. Don't remember the price, but I'd guess $30 to $40, circa 1972. Yeah, that's in line. I would say that's in line with $2.98 in 1939. I have the Spectre Archives, which is really hard to get now. Sold out quickly. Yeah. So they don't keep all those archives and Marvel Masterworks in print, so sometimes it's really, once they go out of print, they can be hard to get.
Yeah.
And of course, the last one here is
no reason.
Slam Bradley.
Here's the thing about those archive editions. Okay, so the paper version is out of print. Doesn't matter. It's a new age. Mm-hmm. If you want to sell to new kids, there's going to be kids who are interested in the past of comic books. Maybe not that many,
right?
But eventually they'll get there. When this is, we're gonna have to see if we can invite this 18-year-old kid from the Philippines I know from a Discord server, and the kid's really smart, and he has a very eclectic taste that even I did not have when I was his age. But he likes a lot of stuff. But so there are people coming up who are going to be like me, and they're going to have discussions about what the 1950s artists were doing, and the real reason they were not working for Timely anymore. but most of these kids are now buying digital. That kid from the Philippines, he can't buy comics. He's in the Philippines. Right. He can't, if the comics arrive there, he can't afford them. But he buys digital editions. So once they have printed the comic, just keep it alive as a digital edition. Somebody will buy it.
Yeah.
It's not like you're losing money if they don't buy it.
Right, because it's digital.
Yeah, just keep it available.
There's no warehouse to rent.
Right. If somebody wants a copy, wait until 200 people say, I want this, and then print 200 copies. You already know you have a sale because those 200 people have ordered it.
You have to be rich to eat fish in my harbor town, or be the king of the sea people here. Newfoundland card moratorium and all. You want to read a good book, a good history book, read Cod, History of the Fish.
They don't let you fish cod in Newfoundland?
Yeah, that's how much it's been overfished.
God damn it. I had cod 2 days ago.
History of the Fish that saved the world, or something like that, or something. I can't. No, Salt is the one. There's a book called. It's a fairly short, interesting book called Cod, History of the Fish that something the world, because cod was what without cod there would have been no European age of exploration, because it was the perfect fish for long sea voyages. It was what they ate on long, because you could salt it and it would preserve for a long time. But the book ended with talking about how cod had been overfished, and they were trying to get the cod put a moratorium on to get the fish populations up. But so far, I read this book 10, 15 years ago. But
what the Portuguese
it hadn't bounced back.
The Portuguese discovered Canada 60 years before Columbus landed in the Caribbean.
Mm-hmm. According to this book, it was the Basques.
But we did it too. That's why we had the ships to go sail around the African coast.
You got to recruit young Filipino
quickly. The kid's name is Joshua C. But his channel is called An Average Comic Book Channel. But there's nothing average about it. The kid's smart. The kid's earnest, and he's gonna go places if he keeps it up. And I really like whenever he does a new video. I really like watching it. It's like we were like 30 or 40 years ago.
You appreciate his enthusiasm.
Definitely.
I always like enthusiasm.
Stuck on one thing. When I was his age, I was stuck on one thing. I was still pretty much only superheroes. But he's not. He's looking at other stuff, and I like to see the way his taste is evolving. He's going to be, if he ever wants to be like me in the way that I absorb information, because it's what I do. I just absorb information. I'm not smart. I just memorize stuff.
Right.
But if he keeps memorizing stuff and looking at other things that are sideways from what he's reading, he's going to be very, very smart. He's probably going to be one of the biggest. 40 years from now, when he's 58, he's going to be one of the biggest experts on comics in the world if he keeps it up.
Huh. and speaking of the Basque, according to this book, I forget what year, sometime during the European exploration era, all the countries of Europe split up all the cod fisheries around the coast. So every country had their own place they could fish for cod. So sort of we got now. The Basques had no country of their own, so therefore had no cod fishery of their own, yet somehow still managed to catch a lot of cod. And then
we could go to Newfoundland, but so did we. Here's the thing: in Portugal, we would have to go through Spanish waters and then through French waters to get somewhere where the cod was.
Mm-hmm.
So we did the same things that the Basques did. We set out to sea,
And someone
we reached Canada. I know that we were in Newfoundland in 1432, even though we didn't know that it was that Newfoundland. Officially, we didn't know that Newfoundland was there, but we did.
Yeah, exactly. And there was I forget, I can't remember who the first boat to officially go to Newfoundland.
It was one of ours.
But they reported seeing Basque fishing boats.
Probably,
but no one really believed them, and it didn't become sort of the official, because the Basques certainly weren't telling anyone.
You know, the age of exploration that is marked for why was it that Portugal and Spain were the ones that were set out to find new lands? Because we were stuck behind the Pyrenees. We couldn't conquer anything in Europe.
Right.
And we could probably try to conquer North Africa, but going to war with the Moroccan and Algerian kingdoms, it was probably not a good idea. In fact, we tried doing that in the 16th century and we lost. Yeah. But going out to sea, we did. So we were trying, both us and the Spaniards, we were looking for new stuff.
Right.
And we weren't telling. That's why Columbus discovering America in 1492 is the official date. But we both of us knew he was there.
Mm-hmm.
In 1494, the Kingdom of Portugal and the Kingdom of Spain signed the Treaty of Tordesillas, where we split, which was with the blessing of the Pope,
right,
split up the world between us and Spain.
Yep.
Which is why the French and the English were not very fond of it. Wait a minute, did Adam and Eve leave the world on their will to Portugal and Spain? But,
stupid Pope.
Yeah, but the idea it was going to be 100 leagues to the west of Cape Bojador in West Africa. We negotiated to 555 miles. Why did we negotiate that? Because we already knew that Brazil was there. But this is we signed it in 1494, so we probably had a few years to discuss this.
Yeah.
It even started before Columbus reached the Caribbean. And we only discovered Brazil in 1500. But the reason why we negotiated, we already knew that Brazil was there. So we would have a piece of America that we could claim. The advantage at the time was that by claiming what was to the east, we got Africa and India, while America we knew that was there, but we didn't know how big it was.
Right.
So Spain would have an undiscovered country, while Portugal would have the short thing.
Right.
We knew that India was there, that China was there. The whole point of going around Africa was to bypass the Ottoman Empire,
right,
and reach the Indian spices.
Mm-hmm. Basques were known as great shipbuilders.
Yep.
Basques came here and started as whalers. The Basques. Well, that was Detective Comics 27 that got us talking about cod and Basques. And I'm not sure how we got on all that, but we did.
And normal people say that comics are for idiots. Here we are discussing the history of whaling and cod fishing.
One of the things I noticed about this is how not for idiots it was. It was much more in line with comic strips of the day than post-code comic books. So I found that kind of interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't know to talk to see if I could confirm that the first stupidification of comics was a Superman radio show, because Superman was throwing landlords off of buildings in the first year. But then Superman, the symbol of hope and being nice to everybody.
What did I see once? It may have been Mercenaut. Do you know him? He's a YouTuber, been around for years and years.
Nope.
But he I don't even. He's one of these guys. I'm not even sure he reads his comics, but he buys them all the time. As a matter of fact, I think he just celebrated his 10-year anniversary. Mercenaut is his name, and he's always going on trips and buying comics, and he just buys everything. He just loves buying. I don't even know if he loves reading comics, but he loves buying comics. But one of the things he did a video on years and years and years ago was, I think it was a 1940 issue of Life magazine that has a Superman story in it.
Mm-hmm.
And he bought it for fairly cheap. And I think it was a new Superman story even. It wasn't a reprint. It was just like I guess, and I was like, wow, it must have been one of like the earliest times that Superman got into a mass market magazine like that. And I remember him figuring it out. It was really like being that it was 1940. It was one of the earliest Supermans. It was like in the first, I don't know, 15 or 20 Superman stories. And he's like, and no one really even knows this one exists. And I found that interesting. I just thought of it now as they're talking about Batman there. But yeah, there's some random issue of Life magazine from 1940 with a Superman story in it.
Mm-hmm.
Have a good evening, Tat.
That.
And it's oversized too, because Life was a big magazine.
Mm-hmm.
I always meant to look that up, but I never did.
The magazines were larger back then, weren't they?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They were, in general, larger.
Which kind of explains why they could afford to buy art. Now, I was looking at stuff. I was looking at stuff related to The Mercenary, that Spanish science fantasy comic, and by Vicente Segredes. I've shown it every once in a while, and I usually talk about it. And the Segredes' uncle, Jose Segredes, his house was turned into a museum in Sevilla, in Valencia, in Spain. But he actually worked for US and UK magazines in the 1930s, and there's stuff that he did for Cosmopolitan out there, and it's pretty good art. It's not like you're not buying easy to do funny fare.
Mm-hmm.
He did an adaptation of the Worlds, and he didn't do the adaptation. He created art for an illustrated version of the Worlds, and that was republished in it's not in Cosmopolitan. It was in the New York magazines, but not the New Yorker.
Mm-hmm.
But he was not the only one, of course. Guys who did comic strips, they would do that type of artwork for the magazines, and they would get paid better than working on comics. But I think it was cheaper for the magazines than buying photographs.
Oh yeah.
And even in 1935.
There was a time in the 90s, early 90s, when video game magazines were big.
Mm-hmm.
Like there was a dozen monthly video game magazines. And all of a sudden, the video game magazines discovered, because their budget for a cover was so much higher than a comic book cover, that they discovered they could hire all the hottest artists from comic books to do their cover. And the comic book artists were glad to do it, because we're talking a comic book artist in 92 might get, if he did pencils and inks, might get $300 for a comic book cover. For a magazine cover, he'd get $3,000. So it was like they were only too glad to. So it was like there's this period in the 90s where video game magazine covers had all the hot comic book artists doing covers for them. Sort of a forgotten time period of comic book art But
Mm.
like I said, I haven't even thought about that in years. I don't know if anyone has those all collected together, but that was a good run there of comic book art, video game magazine covers.
Because it was a kind of a return to the mainstream. Let's by the 1980s, I don't really see any comic book people doing this type of work.
No. Nope. And another comic I got this week.
Even by the 1960s, even something like even Time or Newsweek, they would usually do photos by the 1960s.
Oh yeah,
They
all of illustration started going to photos. Like that's why illustrators in the 50s into the 60s started getting looser and more painterly, because they had to offer illustrations that photos could. So if you see like Bob Peak, I think it is one of the most popular illustrators of the 60s and 70s, very, all sorts of, still have realistic parts, but adding all sorts of painterly elements to it too.
Mhm.
And that's what happened to illustration. But here's one I bought just for its cover illustration. I realized, it turns out that I didn't realize this is Dynamite and Chaos Comics. But there's a logo. I was like, I don't think I've ever bought a Chaos comic. Then I noticed, oh, it's Dynamite too.
Well, Chaos Comics doesn't exist anymore as a publisher, but
Did they get bought by Dynamite?
yeah, I think there was a thing about making sure they got the rights to Lady Death.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, Dynamite must have bought them. I didn't even realize. But I liked this cover. So I was like, you know what? I'll try one of these. This is Lady Hell. I'll try one of these cheesy Chaos comics with the scantily clad devil women. I love her. I don't know why she's wearing a cod piece, but it's some sort of animal with giant horns.
Is Polito writing it?
This is by, let's see, the artist is Zengis Tazbalatov. ZhengisTasbolatov. Oh, Matt
Sounds.
Idelson. Matt Idelson is the editor. I used to work with him at Marvel.
No.
And Dave Sharp is doing the letters. I've known him since our Marvel days in the early 90s.
Sure. Is that what Matt Idelson's doing? Yeah, the last. Yeah, okay. So when did he leave DC?
I don't know, a long time ago, I think. I don't think he ever made the move to the West Coast, but he might have been gone before then.
Okay, so.
But there's a cover gallery. There's 3 pages of a cover of. They must have so many covers for this. Let's see. There's 9. There's 12. So that's 21. And another 12 is 30. They have 33 cover for this.
They better have sold a lot of them.
Later, Lefty Blues. Yeah, I don't. Hey, they sold one to me just because of this cyan cover. I just kind of liked the blue on it, and like, you know what? I'll buy that and put it in my bought only. And the inside art was fine. I also liked the inside art, but it's nothing to write home about.
Yeah, but that name is probably Belarusian.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of these guys hire cheaper artists from overseas. It's the only way they get stuff published. Let's see. Does it mention Chaos Comics in this indicia? Lady Hell.
I think they bought the brand and the logo.
Yes.
And
Chaos and Chaos Comics are copyright and trademark and copyright Dynamite Comics. Yeah. So they definitely did.
Brand Polito's name isn't on it.
No.
Anywhere. Who wrote it?
Eric Burnham. American writers still get lots of work.
Yeah, well, it's not as easy for a foreigner to properly write in English.
Yeah.
You have no idea how much your actual language seeps through the English that you're writing.
That's funny. That just reminds me. I was watching a TikTok. I've been learning a lot now that they made TikToks be able to go to like 3 minutes. There's a lot of people teaching stuff on TikTok, amazingly enough. But there's one woman was telling her story about being raised speaking both English and Spanish. So she knows both English and Spanish.
Right.
But she says sometimes she runs into the problem of, because no, she's from the United States, so mostly she's speaking in English. She doesn't know a word she's using is Spanish. So she's speaking to English to somebody, and all of a sudden she uses, I think it was like, I can't even remember what the word was. It was like the Spanish word for forbidden or something. And all of a sudden she's using the Spanish word, but her brain thinks it's English. And the person she's talking to is like, what? Doesn't understand her. It's like, what? And it takes her time to realize that word isn't English. I found that interesting from someone.
Yeah. Having to use two languages at once is not easy.
Yeah.
Because communication relates to your peers.
Right. And since she learned this as a child too, both languages.
But there are concepts that you're more likely to use with other people.
Yeah.
You know, I think that my English as more of a tendency to be more formal than my Portuguese.
Right.
Because I have to speak with people who are normal.
Right.
And being normal in Portugal means you're an idiot. Yeah.
Don't worry, we got plenty of idiots over here using English.
It's the when you think average culture, it means lower culture, folk. They don't know much, but they know that's the local knowledge, the thing that you share with everybody else. And so that's not formal. And when I engage in English, I come here and I talk to other people who are into comics, and we have a tendency to be smarter than the average bear.
Right.
So here I am more formal than when I am speaking Portuguese, even though in Portuguese I am a journalist, so I need to. I've seen this. I've noticed this because I've had my editor tell me this. I don't have a good vocabulary when I'm writing in Portuguese.
Yeah.
It's not
because you're used to dumbing it down.
Yeah, I'm used to. Yeah, see, my city being a harbor town, there's little in the realm of developed culture here. It's like we're all hillbilly. It's not hillbillies because we're in a harbor town, but the
seabillies.
Yeah, the fisherman equivalent of hillbillies. and I, sometimes I try to say things that sound intelligent to other people, and they have not only do they have no idea what I'm talking about, they seem very disinterested in it.
You always got to worry about boring people. You see that glazed look, and you're like, "Oh, okay."
So you may, if you're fluent in a foreign language alongside your regular language, you may use it in different contexts. Right. So you are more aware of certain words in a formal context in the other language. And because I engage in English with people who are more intellectual, I am more formal in English than I am in Portuguese.
Interesting. Interesting. Another comic I got this week that was really good. This comic has been good for Department of Truth.
Yeah, I'm going through the trade paperback volume 2.
Okay. Well, what was interesting about this issue was the main character. I can't remember his name, but you know him from volume 1 and 2. He's got a boyfriend.
Yeah.
Or a husband even. I think they're married. And this issue is all about, to give you a little bit of a spoiler, in the Department of Truth, there's The Department of Truth. The basic gist of the story is if enough people believe a conspiracy, it rewrites history, and that conspiracy becomes true. And all the ramifications of it become true too. So history can be, the world is malleable and can be changed. So the Department of Truth is led by Lee Harvey Oswald. That's the American one. And the Department of Lies, named ironically, was the Soviet one. And they were, throughout the Cold War, they were kind of battling each other for conspiracy supremacy. Eventually, the U.S. won. But there's also a third party who we don't know much about, who is trying to rein in Lee Harvey Oswald in the Department of Truth because they think he's got too much power and is doing bad things. So there's a third party who we don't really know much about. And this issue explains more of it. But it's mainly about our lead character's husband, who is, they're trying to the third party who wants to rein in the Department of Truth is trying to recruit him in order to recruit his husband too. But this issue is all about the husband of the guy being sort of brought into the knowledge of this world, and it's so the art is so disorienting on purpose. That's the story, that it really does a good job being, look at that page, being disorienting.
Yeah.
So as I'm reading the story and the guy is being disoriented, I am a reader. I am as a reader and being disoriented too. And it was just really well done. Really well done. In the legal environment, we strive to write so to be understood by the smallest possible audience.
Well, yeah, there's this thing about being a lawyer. You have to make it so that nobody knows what you're talking about.
Yeah, so they need you. But yeah, excellent issue of the Department of Truth. They've just been doing such a good job with this. The art, the letter. This is the one. A matter of fact, something I mentioned last week on this show. I also got a discussion going on Facebook about when I mentioned that Barry Windsor Smith winning the Eisner for best lettering was absurd. There was no reason to give him that. I mean, I don't know why they would. I would imagine he, especially since he got best graphic album. And some of my friends who didn't even, some of my comic book friends who don't even read comics anymore, were like, well, was it the best lettering of the year? I'm like, no, it wasn't. The lettering of the Department of Truth is terrific, because to get the lettering and the balloons and everything else to fit in with this chaotic art is not easy.
This double page spread. This is very difficult to read.
Yeah.
And then the worst was when the guy who discovered Bigfoot was trying to look out for Bigfoot.
That was not one of my favorite issues.
Yeah.
I understood what they were going for.
Yeah, they have 2-3 page segments of this. So
I wonder if younger people can read cursive. That's one of the big discussions I always hear is I don't think they teach cursive handwriting anymore in school. They teach typing to everyone, all the kids.
Right.
So it's like I remember reading that, going, it was actually pretty good cursive. It was easy for me to read. Yeah, but I was like, I don't know how many people this is going to be easy to read for.
It's a comic book. Yeah. Every time you put prose into a comic book, it messes up the reading experience.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of it. I'm okay. There wasn't too much of it in there, but I can do without that.
It's 6 pages.
Yeah.
So a comic is 20 pages. You just took 6 pages of a comic to do.
Yeah, I like it. I understood it creatively. I understood what they were going for. I just almost never like it, and those weren't my favorite issues because of it. Like, how good are you at reading cursive in English?
Well, cursive is cursive. I mean, as long as you The letters actually are very
Okay.
even cursive across languages is actually very similar.
Were you taught cursive in school?
Of course, I went to elementary in the 1980s.
Okay, just checking. It's because I don't know. I don't know when they. I don't know if they stopped cheating. When I don't. I'm not sure. But I just know that there have been many comments, jokes, talks about how young people can't read cursive.
Going back to our earlier discussion, my elementary school teacher in the second grade still had a mimeograph in 1987.
Ah, yeah, I think they were around. I don't know about 1980. They were around like in the late 70s. I know that when I was in grade school. I can't remember them in high school though.
Yeah, the thing she had a mimeograph because it was for 30 students. I mean, she's not going to take 30 photocopies. It's cheaper to do the mimeo.
Yeah, just change that handle.
Yeah, she didn't like it, but well.
F cursive, long live the emoji.
Yeah, I don't think they teach emojis in elementary.
Oh, and one thing I bought and read this week, Maria M. by Gilbert Hernandez. This has been on my wish list on Amazon for ages, but I got it off eBay.
That's not related to Love and Rockets.
This is this is a standalone graphic novel. It's not actually Love and Rockets, but it's some of the Love and Rockets characters. And one of the things I want to point out, you can see on top, it's got this was a library copy, which you can sometimes get for cheap on Play, but with good old Bestine rubber cement thinner, I took all the library stickers off.
Oh, don't take them off. Give them personality.
I don't always take the library ones off, but I particularly liked this cover, and there's a big sticker right down there.
Okay, yes, the sticker do, but that thing on the side saying Lexington Library, no, leave it in there.
No, I'm not doing anything with that. No, that's not a sticker, that's a stamp. I'm fine with that.
Right.
It's just if it's a stick, if it's just, and those library stickers were not made to come off, so you got to use Bestine on them. Don't try to peel them without it. This is rubber cement thinner. And if you ever have to get tape or stickers off of comics, this is what you want. I made a video on it years ago, but that's what you want. But yeah, I often like the character of library, and when they have, sometimes they have the like this one didn't. Sometimes they have the stickers on like a plastic overlay book cover. Those I leave on. I often have to wash the plastic. Like when I get a book from the library, even just from the library, because the plastic gets so filthy sometimes from everyone borrowing it. So I wash that. But this is one of them. This is an especially long one too. I think it was 200 and something pages. Let me see if that 232 pages. And what he does sometimes is he takes like Fritz, who's one of his characters, one of his three sisters' characters. She's an actress. She's a B movie actress in his Love and Rockets world, Palomar. So over the years he has made certain ones of her B movies into graphic novels. So you're reading a graphic novel of a movie that Fritz made in the Love and Rockets world. What this one is Fritz and Luba, and who's the other one? Oh, I can't remember the third daughter's name. But their mother is Maria M. And this is her life story made into a movie, made into a graphic novel. So this one, it even says like somewhere in here it says like, based on a true story. But that's because the movie based on Maria M is based on a true story. Because it's this weird meta thing. But Beto loves pulp fiction. He loves pulp movies. He loves pulp stories. So this whole thing is the story of Maria M's life. And she made one movie as an actress. She was a she was the wife of a gangster for years. So there's constant. Well, the only nudity is Marita M. Really, she's naked a bit, but it's there. A lot of it is her husband's gangster activity. So there's lots of murders and killings and running for your life. All that B movie stuff. So I really had a good time. I think. And the eternal question of which Hernandez brothers stuff do you like better? In recent years, I've really been leaning Beto because he's more prolific, has a wider variety of stuff. And it's just so. I mean, I usually always say my favorite is whichever one I'm reading at the moment. And there's a lot of truth to that because I love both their stuff. But this was a lot of fun, and there's weird time jumps in it too. Like there's stuff going on. Like her husband is much older than her, and her husband's two sons are both in love with her. But the one son is the strong, silent type who never says anything. And the second son ends up having an affair with her after the father. There's just so much weird B movie stuff going on in this. But at one point, like one of the characters gets almost killed, and then hides out for 13 years. So it's like 13 years later. Oh, and like the next page is 13 years later, and you're like, oh, okay. Yes, it's the story of life. Sometimes you have to skip 13 years. And I really like this cover too. The colors of it, and the artwork. Nice stuff. Nice, her shooting whoops on the back. But another good Beto book. Well, who do you like better, Jaime or Beto?
I don't know. I really need to get into Love and Rockets. I think I need to go to the other comic shops because they're more likely to have Love and Rockets. But I don't know where to start. Although I think I can start anywhere.
Yeah, if you really can. Hey, King's Poet in the house. The librarians must love that long-haired gent who washes the filthy books before returning. Yup, that's me. Get them home and I wash them down. That reminds me, I also the new issue of Love and Rockets came out. Though there's one thing there's no question about. I prefer Jaime's covers. I think he's a much better cover designer. This one is Beto's cover. Let me make it bigger. This one is Beto's cover, and this one is Jaime's cover. I think Jaime's drawing is definitely prettier, and his sense of graphic design for a cover is definitely better. But story-wise, I don't know. But, another issue of Love and Rockets.
And Anatomy.
Yeah, much more realistic.
Yeah.
But that's what he's going for.
Have you ever thought what would have happened if these guys were more about the money and they would have wanted to work for Marvel or DC?
Well, they did a little bit of Mr. X, and that I think was enough to make them not want to work for anyone.
Sure.
I'm trying to think of anything. Have you ever seen their Mr. X stuff?
No, but
I think it was mostly Jaime did it.
Mike Mignola posted some piece of art he did with Wolverine and Cable from when he did the Wolverine the Jungle Adventure. This would have been early 90s before he created Hellboy. But Mignola could have stayed in the mainstream if you wanted without. I guess the time was right for the market to allow him to create his own stuff.
Yeah.
And he also had the advantage of not being known as a Marvel or DC guy. He had already done Alpha Flight and he already done Cosmic Odyssey, but it was not a big one. Not like Byrne, because John Byrne complained a lot that nobody paid attention to Next Man.
Right.
But Mignola was never that big a seller when he worked at Marvel and DC. So when he created Hellboy, he could become known for something that was really his.
Yeah.
But Mignola was at a period in his career when he was adaptable to whatever the client wanted, and the brothers Hernandez never had that.
Right. Yeah, they couldn't, like they even Mr. X was too much. They did Jaime did a real nice job on those first, I don't know, 2 or 3 issues he did, but I remember reading they were just like, they didn't like the experience. Love and Rockets is my A book. Yep. It has to be evergreen sales. I don't know how much. I wonder about that. I mean, Love and Rockets, the comic book, can't be selling that much. I imagine all the TPBs, all the graphic novels and stuff must be doing them well. But I don't know how much the monthly sales of these comic books are. Or not even monthly, twice a year. Because it's like every one of these, they make an alternate cover for them. Down here. So this is the cover you get in the comic shop. If you want to get the alternate cover, you have to order it from the variant. You have to order it from Fantagraphics, and there are only 400 of them. I have to imagine if they're only selling 400 variant covers, that the circulation for not the trade paperbacks, but the circulation for the actual magazine isn't that high.
If they're selling 5,000, it's a lot.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which I kind of wonder. I mean, the people who buy comics published by Fantagraphics, they're not cover collectors or buying the comic hoping that it goes up in value. So maybe a Love and Rockets longtime fan wants something a little extra.
I would buy them possibly if I didn't have to order them online, because I was just looking at them, and there's like this is issue 12. All the early issues are sold out of the alternate covers, so they sold their 400 copies each. Sure. But another thing I wonder who's buying this is back when I first discovered. Well, I shouldn't say back when I first discovered Love and Rockets fans. Was when I was at art school, 1986, let's say. And there were people who only bought Love and Rockets because of Jaime's work about sort of these punk rock teenage girls. And the people who were buying them were punk rock teenage girls or post-teenage punk rock girls. You know, they probably weren't teenagers anymore. And I'm wondering, I don't think that group stuck around because Maggie and Hopi grew up. I don't know if 30-year-old post-punk rock teenage girls related to post-punk rock teenage, because I wasn't in school anymore with them. Did they keep buying? Did they keep buying Love and Rockets because of Maggie and Hopi, or did they go away?
Not all of them.
I imagine most of them probably went away.
So it would be male fans of Love and Rockets who held out for the last 30 years would be interested in those
comic book, actual like they my friend Suti, she's the one who immediately comes to mind. Went to college with her. She's one of the reasons I started finally reading putting Love and Rockets on my pull list. I had read some of it. I was like, you know what? I'm finally just going to put it on my pull list just for that. I have something to talk to Suti about or whatever. But she was never a comic book fan, though. She was kind of a comic book fan in that she actually contacted me because I'm friends with her on Facebook. I've been friends with her for years, but I haven't seen her since college. She's not one of the college gang I see regularly. But she and her wife were looking to get rid of their shelf of porno comics. So she kept up with some erotic comics over the years, but then she's like, my wife and I are old now. We never look at these. We're not young and horny anymore. She's like, she's like, do you not have any idea, how to get rid of these? And I was like, well, I'm not really sure. I'll have to check in with her again to see if she got rid of them. But I don't know if she kept up with Love and Rockets at all. I'll have to ask her. Because I'm curious, because it struck me today. Jaime's most beloved stuff is the early stuff, which isn't the same for Beto. I don't know if he's got most beloved stuff. He's just got stuff that people like. So I don't know how. I wonder how that would affect them. Like, there are plenty of people who think Jaime's Love and Rocket stuff jumped the shark in 1988 or whatever because he let Maggie and Hopi get old. But I don't know if those same people even like Beto's stuff. So it's a weird thought I had today about that. And how the rivalry between the brothers, how that's sort of talked about in the rivalry between the brothers. Because there's always a little rivalry between the brothers, even when there's not.
Right. Because this isn't really a collaborative effort, even in terms of world building. They each come up with their own characters and situations. How much do they interact?
They don't. But their backgrounds are the same because both brothers use their own backgrounds and grew up liking a lot of the same stuff. There's crossover not in characters but in general themes.
Because it kind of reminds me of a soap opera, but in a traditional TV soap opera, so you have the poor crowd and the rich crowd. Right. And there is one character which connects the storylines between the rich crowd and the poor crowd. But the brothers didn't actually do that?
I don't think... I can't remember anything that connects the stories except Mexico. Like, all the characters... Like, the... well, Jaime's branched out into some other weird sci-fi stuff, but his Maggie and Hopi stories all take place in L.A. But there was always lots of people going from Mexico to L.A. Not Maggie and Hopi. Well, Maggie and Hopi were also... That's another weird thing about Love and Rockets, is Maggie and Hopi, the two teenage girls, that was who everybody loved, the two teenage punk rock girls. But after like the first 5 or 6 years, they were separated and they didn't come back together for like 15 years. So it's like everybody always talked about Maggie and Hopi in Love and Rockets and when they're going to meet up again. And they didn't meet up till they were both adults. It's kind of crazy. I did not buy it for a long time because I thought it was about the stupid band. Then I discovered it. The band named themselves after the book. You can buy Love and... Yeah, that's why I said their trades I must be selling well. Is there a crossover? There's not really a crossover in terms of the characters. I can't think of one. But the characters themselves are kind of always going... Like, most of... Beto's stuff takes place in this little Mexican town, Palomar. But the characters are always leaving, going to the U.S., coming back to Palomar. The U.S. is very involved in this. It's all about, people from the U.S. are always coming there. The characters from the U.S. are always coming in and leaving. And so it's like they both have that going on, but I don't think there's ever a crossover that I can think of. Actual, like Maggie and Hopi never show up in Palomar in Beto's story. So it's so the stories are pretty separate but completely similar, because both brothers like this. They like Mexican wrestlers. They like B movies. They like stuff like that. But always fun to read Love and Rockets, and either of the boys were. Yeah, I would. I mean, like I said, I would just grab that. They actually have them all in order, but most of them, like they have a lot of books like this. Here, I haven't even read this one yet. It's funny. I bought this one like last weekend and read it, and I got this one like at Christmas and haven't read it yet. I don't know why. But this is a Love and Rockets book, Human Diastrophism. And you could read just this. I think it doesn't even like. I think somewhere in here it tells you what volume it is in Love and Rockets, but it really doesn't even. It's set up just to be its own thing. So, what does this say? Stories in this volume originally appeared in Love and Rockets Bonanza, Love and Rockets 21 to 26, 41 to 48, 50, and 10 years of Love and Rockets. So it's just a collection of, you could probably pick up any one of these volumes and just read it. By the way, this one I got Christmas time, George Orwell, this one won an Eisner. George Orwell, 1984 graphic novel by Fido Nesti.
Yeah, I think that's the one that I don't want to buy. We have 2 adaptations in the Portuguese market, plus a George Orwell biography, and that one's the one that I was less interested in.
Well, it won an Eisner for like best adapted work or something. It was pretty good. I enjoyed it.
I think that's the more abstract one, and I don't think you need to be abstract in the world of 1984 because art is controlled by the state, and anything that's out of the ordinary would not be allowed. So, doing a story that's an adaptation where the story becomes less realistic is going against the story.
I wonder what creators were influenced by Love and Rockets. It's always cited as crucial to indie comics. That's a good question. I think the problem is it's a unicorn. If you were to try to do a book like Love and Rockets, you'd fail. Because it's, I can't think of anything like it. Because Love and Rockets has had the same publisher all these years, who's been behind them all. You know, they've been a cash cow, I assume, for Fantagraphics. But I don't know. If you were to start out doing something like Love and Rockets, I don't know how much of a readership you could get.
No, yeah. You can't really do Love and Rockets because it's like a fantasy version of the world that the brothers live in.
Yeah.
So the best you probably could come up with was what if Harvey Pekar was actually had any imagination?
No, I'm saying if a cartoonist decided to do his own fantasy world of what he grew up in, I don't think it would sell.
Probably not.
I think what made Love and Rockets sell early on, besides the talent of the two brothers, was Maggie and Hopi. Maggie and Hopi hit a chord with readers.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was sort of the hook. Well, I think that's what's, because it started out sort of this weird sci-fi book, but once he really got Maggie and Hopi as these two teenage girl punk rockers, that I think was what got people in. And they were honest teenage girls. They were like Tank Girl is not, she's sort of a punk rocker as a style.
Right, but there's the whole British music influence in there.
Right.
especially because Tinkerbell was created by a guy that was connected to the music industry.
Mm-hmm. And that's what helped Love and Rockets originally too, was Maggie and Hopi were listening to all the same bands that their fans were.
Sure, but in this case, it's parallel evolution.
Yeah. So I would think I think the only way they could have an influence, the only way you could duplicate Love and Rockets is with a young cartoonist making comics about whatever his or her band, whatever's going on with teenagers right now, or 4 or 5 years ago, depending. That because otherwise, I don't think you can make personal comics like they do and it succeed. I mean, there's nothing to copy in terms of content, in terms of style, maybe drawing style, but in terms of content, I don't think there's anything to copy or influence.
No. It's kind of weird because you do need that young naivete to create that.
Yeah.
But you need to have a little head to figure out people who are well-rounded people.
Right.
Because if you're trying to let me make a comic about me when I was a teenager, well, when you were a teenager, you were an idiot. That's what teenagers.
And I think you'd have to be 22 when you did that.
Sure.
Like if I were to decide to make a story about sort of some niche universal experience as a teenager right now, I'd never be able to get it. I'd be like the old guy trying to write young hip stuff. That's just the way it works.
Face front, Troublevers.
I see the BD and Moon twins.
Gabriel
modern version.
Gabriel Byrne, the yeah, it's the guys who did Umbrella Academy.
Okay.
Gabriel Byrne and Fabio Moon.
Right. But
yeah, I mean, they're not. I wouldn't say they're directly influenced.
How about Scott Pilgrim? I don't know Scott Pilgrim that well. I tried reading the first volume of it and was like, holy cow, this is the hot thing people love. I just didn't like it.
Yeah, I'm going based on the movie, which is kind of something that I caught on TV, and I might as well watch this. But I never really got into the comic because when I try to read it, why would I want to buy that? I'm leafing through it on the store.
But enough young people liked it, that could be an equivalent. That's the only thing I could think of. Like it passed me by when I tried to read it. But.
Sure, yeah, I can't even remember. I think I was still in my my early 30s when that thing was big, but it's not really what I was into.
Yeah, don't be Dean Moon from Casanova. Okay, didn't they also do what was that one that everybody liked about a family going in? Oh God, there was some real heart-rending one with a father dying or something that I think those guys did that everybody loved. I cannot remember the name of it to save my life.
I think I remember what you're talking about.
Oh, what the hell was the name of that?
Day Tripper?
Day Tripper, that's it. I remember the movie by the same name, but I couldn't remember the name. I was like, there's a movie. But yeah, not his thing either, Spot Pilgrim. Yeah, but that could be close. Sweet Tooth. Yeah, I don't know if Sweet Tooth.
Sure, if you're talking about the magical realism, although it doesn't manifest in the same way.
Yeah.
And I don't think that the brothers Hernandez are an influence on Scott Pilgrim.
No, it's tough. It's tough to pick them out everybody loves their stuff, and I'm sure, but in terms of like wanting to make your own, I think that's too hard. I think they're too idiosyncratic. And like I said, they're unicorns. I really think their success is a unicorn. It's its own thing.
Sure.
Trying to duplicate their success would be very, very hard
Mhm.
because it
Right.
took them a long time too.
Right. When you
Two,
think about Love and Rockets, I mean, you can. I'm sure you can see in there all the reasons why it would have failed as a fine
yeah.
as a commercial hit.
Mm-hmm.
So there's got to be there's something in there that's personal that makes the readers connect to the work
Right.
and want to tell everybody about it.
And I think it took a while for Love and Rockets to succeed as a financial thing.
Hmm.
And I think Fantagraphics really had to stand by them for years saying, we think this will make money.
Sure.
And eventually it did. I'm sure it makes plenty. They got a lot of books to sell. That kind of Love and Rocket character work is hard to do. Yeah. Not so many novelists can do character that well. That's true. And like I always say, they're both good storytellers.
Mhm.
And the example I give is there's a story, it's in one of the omnibuses by Jaime, called The Death of Speedy. Speedy is one of his characters. And I was shocked when Speedy died.
Mhm.
The name of the story is The Death of Speedy. I should have saw it coming. But still, when it actually came, I was shocked and affected by it. That's how good his storytelling is.
Mhm.
And there's not a lot of people I can say that about, you know?
Mhm.
Mm-hmm. Love and Rock. What else did I get this week? I finally got my copy of Super Freaks. And this is just the one. There is I didn't know it existed. There is a Savage Dragon podcast. The Savage Fincast. Fin for the fin on his head. And the guys at the podcast did their own one-shot comic with a bunch of Savage Dragon stories. So it's an anthology of Savage Dragon stories or stories that take place in the Savage Dragon universe. And this came out like a month and a half ago, but my shop got shorted on it. And my copy only came in this week finally. But if you're not a Savage Dragon fan, you're probably not going to enjoy this. Otherwise, just some fun little comics. It's, nothing great. Bunch of people you've never seen, but I didn't know anyone's name in this, but they all did a good job taking little bits of the Savage Dragon universe and making stories out of it. So it was. I'm glad I finally got it. I found it enjoyable. One of those sort of one-off, out of the way comics that's unimportant but fun.
Mhm.
Super Freaks. But I've never once listened to the Savage Fincast. I'm going to have to check it out sometime.
I don't really have time to listen to comic book podcasts. Since most of the stuff I do on comic books is on YouTube.
Me
So,
too. Same thing.
but that means I'm kind of missing out on themed things.
Yeah, I don't like themed things as much. At least not in my conscious choice.
Mhm.
Often when I actually sit down and watch a themed thing, I enjoy it. No problem. You're like, but when I'm actually picking something to watch,
Mhm.
I'm always like, it always kind of turns me. I don't care about that theme.
Sure.
Whatever, a theme. Just give me general talk. I want to hear what's on your mind.
Yeah. Like the podcast about everything X-Men. Yeah, no. I mean, if you like comics and you have a great idea on the X-Men, let's listen to it.
Right.
Okay, this week we're going to talk about Gambit. Okay, why? It sounds planned. This week I was thinking about Gambit, and I'd rather hear. I mean, if you and I were to start talking about Gambit, it would come out as more natural.
Right. It would be because we have something to say about Gambit.
Mm-hmm.
Mon cher.
But
with
if
his
we decide,
outrageous.
if we had a plan like, okay, so 4 weeks from now we're going to talk about Gambit. Okay, why? 4 weeks, I don't want to talk about Gambit.
Well, let me check. I think I wrote a note down in my notebook this week. Earl Grey does the best comic cast. Yeah, he does. He does do good ones. I like his. He hasn't made one in a little. No, yes, he has. Earl Grey. He was who was just interviewing Bill Crabtree. Was that Earl Grey?
It was Earl Grey.
That was pretty well done.
Yeah, which is kind of a different from what he's been doing.
Yeah.
The thing is, Earl Grey does want to do stuff talking to other people, but he has those videos in German that he does, and so we end up not watching them.
Yeah. You know what's funny? I commented on it. I liked one of the things that Bill Crabtree said about making art. When he said making art is kind of like having a box and you reach into the box to try to see what's there. And if you've got nothing in the box, you're out of luck. Because like one of the first things you have to ask yourself as an artist is, what do I want to do? And that's kind of reaching into the box. Then I realized later on, I don't know why this didn't strike me at the moment. I have a literal box of stuff. And this is my box of stuff that I, like a lot of it's my Dreams of Things covers that are all in progress. So when I can't think of something I want to do, I go into my literal box of stuff and pull something out. Like, no wonder I like the metaphor so much. I have a literal box. Yeah, but the interview started out a little slow, but got good in the second half. Let's see, what did I write down in my little book? Did I write down anything? Oh, that was interesting. What's his name? Mark Avenger posted a video. One of those little fluff pieces that the news does on Comic Cons. And little local, but it was the 1975 San Diego Comic Con. And so it was just, a reporter going around saying, oh, comic books are worth this much or that much. In conditions, it means everything. But the one thing I noticed that I found interesting about watching it is 1975, San Diego. There was not a comic book box or backing board in sight. All the boxes were cardboard boxes from someplace else. All the comics were in bags, but no boards. And you see, and people just had like piles of comics on their table in front of them. People would just thumb through them. And they were all, like I said, they were in bags. So I was like, wow, the backing board wasn't mainstream by 1970. Because I still don't use backing boards for most of my stuff just because I'm from the pre-backing board era. But I was like, I don't know when that switchover was from people like me who don't really, I have my most valuable, or some of my favorite or comics I handle all the time with backing boards. But I don't have, like, my main collection is not in backing boards. Mm-hmm. I've probably, out of 12,000 comics, I probably have 1,000 comics in backing boards. But I was like, I wonder when backing boards became, sometime in the 80s, I think it was, backing boards became standard. If you started buying comics, you got bags and boards for your comics. Yeah, I can't remember when boards came along. Neither can I. Sometime in the 80s. X-Men 266 games was the first original comic I ever bought in 1990 from a Portuguese newsstand. Hated it. Awful paper. A Roro with a mohawk. WTF.
And moving from Mark Silvestri to Jim Lee.
Yeah.
I still don't understand why people saw Mark Silvestri.
Mark Silvestri's coming back and doing something, I think. I forget what. He's got a new comic coming out. Yeah, definitely not common in the early 80s, but I think by the end of the 80s, it was common.
And I never saw. Okay, why do people like this? Because Sylvester replaced Romita Jr. On the X Men, and I was like, ah. And then he moved to Wolverine when Jim Lee came on board, and the idea was that they were all big. But did they become big because they were on X titles? I mean, Sylvester is not a good. He was doing King Conan before he went to the X Men, and but I never saw it. Romita did a great job with storytelling, and Romita only did breakdowns. He didn't do full art.
Mm-hmm.
But even so, the thing that was always good about Romita was his storytelling. He is very good at is very good at doing the character acting and character movement. It sounds very natural. It all looks very natural. So it doesn't matter who's actually finishing the artwork, because they're whatever they do is based on the storytelling that Romita Jr. did. And Silvestri was more. He was too loose, always too loose for me. So
Your best memories of Silvestri are on Wolverine.
I don't know. I still think that Wolverine's best artist was John Buscema.
Wow, tough to compete with John Buscema.
Yeah, but yeah, for a guy who didn't like superheroes, he was very good at them, and he made the brown costume work even in an environment where the brown costume is not suited.
Yeah. I think the backing board showed up a little before the late '80s. They like I remember them in the mid '80s a little, and I remember occasionally getting comics that had backing boards in them in the mid '80s. Matter of fact, one of them I had out last week was, but I don't think they were in full swing till the late '80s, early '90s. I don't even know when, but it's an interesting.
I never heard about backing boards before the late '90s, which is when I started reading stuff in English.
Oh, they were definitely big before then. But
Sure.
you didn't have the newsstands. I mean, the
Yeah. But what to me looked like backing boards are important to people who only care about the monetary value.
They care about condition, right?
Right, because if I read the story, I want to read it again. That's what I always did. I don't do it anymore. I don't have the time for it,
right,
nor the inclination. I don't feel the need to reread every comic in my collection anymore. I mean, if all of my comics, they're in terrible condition.
Mm-hmm.
Because I read them and reread them.
Oh, from when I was a kid, they sure are.
Yeah, and I took them with me on vacation. And I'm lucky they came back, because there was a time when I knew I wanted them to come back. But still, I mean, it's not like that I hid them away from the weather. And no, it's a comic. I read them.
Here's a weird look at my backing board habit. Out of all these comics that I got this week, the one that's going to get a backing board is this one. Because my only bought for their cover section, I put backing boards in them because I handle them a lot. I like to go to my bought just for their cover section and pull out a handful of them and look through them. Just say, oh yeah, I remember this one because I bought them just for their covers, so I may as well look at their covers. So they're easier to handle with the backing board in them. So that's what I do. But none of these other ones will get backing boards. That's a weird thing. Backing boards help a lot, but plastic bags are questionable. But you need the bag to hold the board. No, I find the plastic bags really help me keep my comics in good condition. Just in handling them. Many a time before plastic bags, I got a folded cover or something. Because just in looking through them and handling them, a cover folds over. That's why I like the plastic bags. I'd never do that anymore. Good evening. Gadav grind. Okay. Good evening. And the other little note I have here besides that video was I didn't realize that it was out, but we're talking about the early days of Marvel and this and that. And the 1961 Marvel Omnibus is out. Do you remember we talked about that, I think, a year ago? They actually have an omnibus that has Fantastic Four #1 and every other Marvel comic from that month out, which is all the stuff Million Model, the Westerns, all that stuff. And I was always like, who's going to buy this? Me or you, possibly, but I don't know who else is going to get it.
Yeah. I mean,
if I didn't lend my back in these books, they would have been in good condition. Oh, yeah, you lend the books out, good condition, even without bags and boards. Yeah.
You know what was the worst? When you tried to get your normie friends into comics, and they didn't care about the condition to give it back.
Yeah. Oh, he's AKA Comics Unlimited 1979. I know that handle. Oops, we got his books back. Yeah. I think 1962 Omnibus came out next. That's right. There's a 1962 one. Must have been the first Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Or Amazing Fantasy 15.
Yeah, Amazing Fantasy 15 and Journey into Mystery 83 came out around the same time. And so did Tales to Astonish 35, which is the first Ant-Man. Because, of course, Hank Pym had debuted in a monster story.
Yeah.
So I don't really count that as... our obsession with first appearances and origin stories. Ant-Man debuts in Tales to Astonish 35. That Hank Pym, who appears in The Man in the Handhill, is a whole different character. It just happens to be called Hank Pym. Is not really related to the superhero story. It doesn't matter that there are ants on both.
You ruin everybody's sales pitch saying that stuff.
Yeah, that's what I want to do. I want to ruin everybody's sales pitch. This is no, I don't care. I don't care if it's the first appearance. It's not a first appearance because the story that, in this case in particular, the context is not the same.
Right.
The Man in the Handhill is a monster story where a guy trying to mess with science that he shouldn't be gets turned into microscopic size and runs around in an anthill. And Tales in Astonish number 35 is the first appearance of a superhero who happens to have ant-based powers. But that makes them connected. I don't care because
prototype for.
I don't care. It's not the same context, and if it's not the same context, they're different products, and it's not a first appearance.
Quit ruining everybody's sale pitch. Come on,
everybody's sales pitch. I'm going to make your $1,000 comic be worth $5.
Sleepy Reader. As a kid, I believed the second issue was always better than the first. I believe that a lot of times now.
It's in the 10th issue is even better than the previous 9.
Yeah.
Unless the comic sticks in general, then the 10th issue is when it gets canceled.
Especially with today's comics, where they stretch origins out over whole story arcs.
Yeah.
Because all origin, the problem I have with origin stories are they're all the same.
Mm-hmm.
First, I wasn't this thing. Something happened. Then I was this thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, you're this thing now. Get on and tell us some stories. And speaking of this thing, Shaolin Cowboy. What's the name of this one again? Cruel to be Kin, issue number 4. The first 3 issues were one big fight in the desert. What was that?
If I think, since Jeff Darrow is connected with the French industry, he should have put that out in France first, and he would do a series of regular albums, and he wouldn't feel the need to stretch out and then semi-cancel it and come back and do a titled miniseries.
You just want it all as an album. So I don't blame you. I'd love to see this artwork bigger. He's got some terrific stuff in here. And this issue, finally the big fight in the desert ends, which happened in the past, and we head to the city in the present. So, but the story is really an excuse for the visual storytelling.
Yeah, that's not a problem in France. A lot of things are an excuse for the visual storytelling,
and it's terrific.
I mean, that's what Arzek is there for Mobius. It's not about the story. I mean, there's really no story.
I'd love to see this in that oversized format that they published. That what was it that Terry Dodson work in Adventure Man and stuff like that. That looked
That's
terrific.
the new objective in life. He's trying to convince all you Americans that you also want everything to come out as an album. I mean, would it be that bad? Seriously?
Yeah.
Some people tell me, "Oh, I like the idea of coming back next month."
Something like this would be fine as an album.
Yeah,
This isn't. There's no reason for this to be a periodical.
sure.
So I can understand that. It's like the Adventure Man and the Red something, I can't remember. I started buying those as albums. I was like, I don't want them the individual issues. I want the oversized hardcover album. Original Shaolin Cowboy is James Carradine. Department of Truth.
This does work as a periodical, but you know that it's a sort of it's like the Sandman. The Sandman is a 75 issue limited series.
Yeah.
And this is a whatever it is going to be limited series.
Right.
So James Tynion does need to think of this as a series of volumes that and you know what,
it works as individual issues too, though,
because this is a Vertigo comic. It just happens that Vertigo was no longer there when he put it out.
So you say that, but I actually don't like Vertigo comics. To me, Vertigo comics were always corporate indie comics.
Sure.
I understand if you're a fan of Vertigo, comparing that to Vertigo, but I almost never compare anything to Vertigo, even though I read some Vertigo comics and liked them. But in general, that's how I always perceived them. So it's weird that I'm like the one person who doesn't see Vertigo comics as a good thing.
Just because something, you have to, if you as a creator, you have to be smart enough to fool the corporation to put out your indie comics.
Yeah.
And most of Vertigo is a lot of people fooling fooling the DC people into putting out an indie comic.
I wonder why he doesn't do albums. Surely they would pay better than Dark Horse. Well, Dark Horse eventually puts it out as albums. I think he owns Shaolin Cowboy, so maybe he can, does Shaolin Cowboy get put out in albums in Europe eventually?
No, it comes out in the same format as the trade paperbacks.
Okay, because I have like from 10 years ago an oversized album of Shaolin Cowboy. I forget which series, but it has possibly the worst cardboard cover I've ever seen. I mean, the inside is fine, but all hardcovers are actually cardboard, but they're coated and other paper. This one was like uncoated cardboard. It's like you look at the edge of it, there's the cardboard, and it's like, what? Not very aesthetically pleasing. His art would be awesome in large size. Yeah, definitely. Lots of Image books seem like Vertigo comics to me.
Sure, but there's a lot of guys who were working at Marvel and DC. Now they don't have a Vertigo at DC to put out their own comics, so they go to Image, which is the next best thing.
It was mostly miss with me for Vertigo comics. A couple of hits.
Vertigo. I mean, I think of Vertigo like the Epic label in music. Epic is Sony's indie label. So, but it's also going to be in and miss. You know that you're going to get stuff that does not sound like pre-produced music, but you know that if you look through the catalog, you're going to find something that you like that's out of the ordinary. And Vertigo was the same thing, but you didn't have to like everything that Vertigo put out. But ultimately, I mean, that's what a book publisher is. You're not supposed to like all the book publisher's catalog. The reason why we still want to like everything that a label puts out still comes from the idea that we think of the Marvel and DC labels are mostly about the universe.
Vertigo, you think you like it's really a brand you like or dislike, and it's not really, like I said, my dislike of Vertigo isn't really based on anything besides my perception of it. Yeah, that's all it's based on, and that perception is 20 years old.
Sure, but if you all of a sudden you start disliking a Marvel or DC title, it spreads to the rest of Marvel and DCU, and you end up dropping superhero comics.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't like something that Vertigo puts out, maybe you like something that they put out later. You don't think, oh, Vertigo, they'll put out this comic. No, you don't think like that. Because, in Marvel and DC, if a comic sucks, it ends up contaminating the rest via the crossovers. Because you have a crossover which is about Doctor Doom taking over the world, but Squirrel Girl shows up. Squirrel Girl has no business in a comic about Doctor Doom taking over the world.
Nope. But there Grimm #4 came out. This is the one that's about the one of the many Grim Reapers out. It's got some nice art, a decent little storytelling. It's solid comic. I enjoyed this issue. What is this? Boom? It's a Boom comic, so it's probably going 5 or 6 issues. I don't even know. She's got she's a Grim Reaper. There's a bunch of Grim Reapers. If somebody dies, they bring them across to the afterworld. Something went wrong. She's got to figure out what went wrong. And she's got a mysterious past. So it's nothing you haven't read before, but it's well done. Once again, this would probably fit right in with Vertigo. It's that type of thing. But nice artwork. There's a nice little silhouette shot of her. Mm-hmm. But fun book. Fun book. Wasn't there a series of Animal Man on Vertigo?
I always feel the need to explain this because people think about early Vertigo as Sandman and Alan Moore's Swamp Thing and Grant Morrison's Animal Man. By the time Animal Man and Swamp Thing joined Vertigo, Alan Moore and Grant Morrison are long gone. Even Sandman only moves to Vertigo with issue number 42. Why? Because it's the first month that there are Vertigo comics. Vertigo was created as a brand to unite their comics that were not really part of the DC universe with the leftover material that came from Disney's aborted Touchmark Comics line, which is what opened the idea that Vertigo would be a creator-owned line. Mm-hmm. The Touchmark Comics were creator-owned. It was Sebastiano, Nevada? No, Goddess. Those were the first ones that Vertigo put out, which were not owned by DC. Then there only were the DC stuff, and then it was Animal Man and Swamp Thing and She the Changing Man and Doom Patrol. But when those comics end and they start putting out new stuff, like Preacher and in the Invisibles, they're creator-owned because they have the idea that they don't really need to own the copyright to the stories as long as the contract is good for Warner in some way.
They're not quite creator-owned, right? They got some weird thing in there where like one of them owns the trademark and one of them owns the copyright or something weird like that.
Because there are a few comics where they use trademarks from previous DC titles, like The Losers.
Right. So it's like those creators can't take, like, I don't think he couldn't take Preacher on his own and publish it somewhere else. There's something weird with those contracts. That's like, that's what I remember reading. I don't really remember it. I could be wrong.
There are a few Vertigo comics which they never reprinted, and the creators managed to take them somewhere else. I have Outlaw Nation in a giant black and white volume, which was not published by Vertigo.
All right.
There's SCI Spy, which was originally Helix, and then it was the graphic novel came out through Dark Horse. But yeah, Preacher, it's kind of like Watchmen. If they let Preacher go out of print, Garth Ennis feel free to take it somewhere else. Losers, Witching Hour, the stories are copyrighted creators. But those titles, the trademark belongs to DC, so they can't really take the stories from Losers anywhere else. But anytime they do something with those stories, they have to pay Andy Diggle and Jock. which since there's a movie of the losers, they made some money from it. Not that much because royalties aren't really they think there's a lot of people think I made it big because my comic was made into a Hollywood movie, but you made probably 5 figures from it.
Yeah.
And the movie costs the movie costs 7 or 8 figures to make.
Aerosmith moved to Image, but that Aerosmith wasn't Vertigo, I don't think, was it? What was that?
Wildstorm.
Wildstorm. Oh, okay.
But it was it wasn't Homage Comics because it didn't exist anymore as a label. But yeah, it was one of the creator-owned stuff that Wildstorm brought over. So
there's so many shady comic book contracts. Who knows what is what?
Yeah, I mean, it's your stuff, but you can do anything with it because of distribution rights.
Yeah. The last comic I got this week, Radiant Black. This is a high number now. 17 it's up to.
Oh,
this
man.
is a fun superhero story.
Yes, 17. That means I can't understand it anymore. It needs to be rebooted to number 1 now.
But this has been an interesting... What's been one of the interesting things about Radiant Black is it was originally the story about I keep forgetting these guys are in their mid-30s because the art reminds me of Invincible art, and they kind of look like teenagers in that style of art. But the one guy moved back to his old hometown. He had to move in with his parents because he never got his second book going.
Mm-hmm.
And his old best friend is there, so they're buddies. They start hanging out. And the writer ends up getting this magical armor where he's Radiant Black. But like 6 issues in, he almost dies. And his best friend ends up getting the Radiant Black armor. So he's been Radiant Black this whole time until he nearly dies in this issue. And his friend takes back the Radiant Black armor to save him. And now it seems they're going to share the armor somehow. Even both of them were in the middle of the fight this time with half the armor on. It was kind of like weird. But it's a fun, little superhero universe they got going here. Rogue Sun, Radiant Black, Radiant Red, and Dead Lucky is the new one. But, fun. Like, when I get something that's up to 17, I'm like, whoa, that's a high number. A super high number. One other thing I got this week, not quite comics related. Another version of The Great Gatsby. What's interesting about this too is the publisher is from India. It's Fingerprints Classic, but somewhere in here it says India. Where is that? Fingerprints Classic, an imprint of Prakash Books, India. So I guess we got an Indian pub. Since it's in the public domain now, everyone's putting out their own version of it.
I don't care yet that public domain internationally. That can't be true. Let's see. When did F. Scott Fitzgerald die?
Oh, in the 40s.
Oh, yes. Okay, so it is in the public domain, even in Europe. Yeah.
Yeah, first published 1925. I think everything from 25 came out a couple of years ago.
In the U.S., yes, but
in the U.S., right?
Fitzgerald. So it says here that he died in 1940. So Life of Creator plus 70. It's been in the public domain after 2010.
But yeah, neat.
But there are people because copyright laws regarding the public domain are not the same in the US and in Europe. People get strange ideas. I'm on this Facebook group about people who want to make comics about creator-owned superheroes, about public domain superheroes. Some guy found, I found this character from the 40s from a Yugoslavian comic. It's probably in the public domain.
Yeah.
And I look it up. Turns out the creator died in 2002. So it only goes to the public domain in 2072.
It's a pretty nice cover. I like it. It's got two metallic inks on it. So there's a gold metallic ink and a red metallic ink. It did a nice job on that. And the book is actually like I bought a thicker illustrated Great Gatsby last December. I showed it off here. It was one that wouldn't open. It was like three times as thick as this one. This one's got some really thin, nice parchment-like paper. It's a very thin paper. But the other one, it was like the spine wouldn't open. I was like, oh, I can't even read this one. All those nice, beautiful cover, but this one I can read. So I'm happy that I was like, you know what? I don't have a hardcover version I can read. I was shopping for a soap dish on Amazon, and I bought a book instead. The Great Gatsby.
Yeah, I found the great. Yeah, I saw the Portuguese edition of the graphic novel adaptation. It's the one that sucks, so I'm not really gonna buy it.
Oh yeah, I think that was one of those ones I have over there. Okay. Yeah, I'm always like I said, I'm always fascinated by what they now that I've read The Great Gatsby enough and listened to the audiobook enough, I'm always amazed by what scenes they leave out. I don't have to reread those other graphic novels just to see what scenes they leave out. That's always what made them leave this out? And could they go back later at another time and put them in?
What great literary works should they adapt into comics?
Good question. I'm a huge fan of writers such as David Foster Wallace, Philip Roth, James Carroll Oates, Henry Miller, John Brown. I write poetry myself. Okay. You could be the next street poet, Ray.
Come on, everybody's got to be better than street poetry.
Who doesn't love street poet Ray? Really wish I could find my old issues of that. I must have gotten rid of them somehow. Well.
Liking street poetry is like liking Biodome.
A great work that could be made into a comic book. Let's see. Dracula.
I got the Dracula right here.
Already done.
Yep.
King's Poet did performance poetry. Just looking through previews, AWA has a new book coming out in November called Gatsby. It reimagines the Great Gatsby as a multicultural thriller. I will have to check that out.
What else could we have?
The Maltese Falcon.
Hmm.
Has that ever been adapted?
Into a comic? I'm sure it hasn't. But it should be a shoe-in, right?
Yeah.
Can you imagine the guys who do
Brubaker and Phillips?
No. Guarnido and the...
Are they European guys? I don't even know.
Yeah. Yeah, the guys who do Black... Can you imagine the guys who do Black Sad?
Okay.
Comic with actual people doing the Maltese Falcon.
Oh, Charles Burns doing the Maltese Falcon. That just, I don't know why that popped in. Maybe because the art covers look similar, but not great literature, but I want Wooster and Jeeves in comics. Biodome is one of my favorite movies, pal.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
Jeeves, I think it's Wooster and Jeeves.
Biodome is a movie that is so bad that it's good. It's in that rare category.
There's the name you're looking for?
Yeah, Juan Diaz Canales and Juan Giovanni.
I don't know what Blanding's Castle is, so I don't get that reference. Gus must. Yeah.
Okay, so the Maltese Falcon was by Dashiell Hammett?
Yeah.
No, the movie script. No, it is by Dashiell Hammett.
Yeah, it's by Dashiell Hammett.
And Dashiell Hammett.
I was reading it recently. Didn't finish
died
it.
in 1961, which puts it into the public domain in 2031 in Europe. So we can have that comic before the US by about 50 years. Well, if it comes out in French, I promise to buy a bunch of copies and I'll send it to you.
The Dead Father of our darling Bartholomew would make a great graphic comic. I don't know that one at all. I've been reading mostly nonfiction my adult life, so The Killer Inside Me is better. Oh, that's another Hamlet, Dashiell Hammett. I'm beginning to not be able to speak. Okay, that's the one he mentioned before is by the Worcester and Jeeves author.
The Dead Father's too recent. It was published in 1975.
Well, since this is all fantasy, we could license them.
Sure. No, but the idea here is that nobody licensed them. They're in the public. Anyone can do them because they're in the public domain.
Yeah. I'm just saying we're not doing them anyway, so we could pretend we're licensing them too. That's all right. For our,
Speaking of things that aren't real, you had a Reed Rip and Slab there?
Oh, you want to do one? Let's share.
Sure.
I got one here. I don't remember which one. Let's see which one's up. Looks like June 1945. Haphazard. Feature Comics and Prize Comics. Look at that. Those are 3 1945 comics I've never heard of is our theme here.
Okay, so that's Doll Man. So that's a quality.
The Killer Inside Me is Jim Thompson, who is much better than Dashiell Hammett. Haphazard. Feature Comics. Prize Comics. I don't know anything. I'm completely unaware of all 3 of these.
Right. So I'm going to read Haphazard, Slab Feature Comics, and Rip Prize Comics.
Ooh.
Because I really don't care about those knights in shining armor. They look boring.
I kind of like those knights. I think I'm more interested in those knights in shining armor than
they appear to be giant robots, but they just don't get it. I mean, I'm going to Slab Feature Comics because I like that. The large hand throwing ball.
That's a good cover. I think definitely I'm going to slab that just because hanging on the wall, that'll look nice.
But I want to figure out what the hell's going on at Haphazard. I mean, there's a...
Reed has Rip Feature. Oh, he's ripping the nice cover. And Slab Prize. I guess he likes Prize better. Another Slab Prize. Reed. 2 Rip Features in a row. Boy, we're both Slab and Feature. They're both ripping them.
But everybody wants to read Haphazard. I mean, yeah, look at it. What the hell is going on there? I have to know.
Since everybody's reading Haphazard, I'll have to, be a contrarian and read Prize comics.
Yeah, you can tell me what's going on with those robot knights.
And where would you put the dolphin? Which character would get replaced by the dolphin?
Maybe the giant hand in Feature Comics.
Oh, there's a little guy crawling out of the back of the robot of the sword. I didn't even notice that. Yeah. Now I really want to read that one. I'm going to have the dolphin jumping out of that robot armor. That's where I'm putting the dolphin. Replacing that guy with a dolphin. Same word balloon. Whatever. Let me see what that word balloon says. Where is it? Whoop, I get hide that. That word balloon says, "Oh no. This is no place for surprise." Oh, I get it. He's a knight. Surprise. Oh, boy, that's a bad... I might have to rip that one for that bad pun. I might have to change my mind. But the dolphin's still coming out there.
Surprise. Is that a flesh wound?
What was that?
Surprise. Is that a flesh wound?
Could be a Flash villain.
No, it's a flesh wound. Like in the Knights in Monty Python. They use the arm. Oh, it's just a flesh wound.
Okay. Have a great night, everyone. I'm putting my first video later tonight.
All right.
Is it going to be under this channel? Your Godov grind.
God of Grinds. Let's go to God of Grind and
Let me write that down. Godov.
let's
Godov grind. All right. I would have 2 dolphin knights fighting each other. I play by my own rules. None. Drop the dolphin into the fire. Rip haphazard. Woo. Read feature. And he's slabbing prize. All right. We'll have to subscribe to you and check out your first video. We will do that. What's your first video going to be about that you're recording? I'm on Instagram. I'm following most of everyone in the community. Okay.
Well, let's go to Instagram as well. God of Grind 1979.
Yeah, that's where I've seen that name from. Instagram, then. Instagram.
All right, so I've just followed you on Instagram as well.
Dun, dun, dun. Man, shiny things are cool. Okay, I can stop sharing now. Shiny things are cool. We need more shiny books.
I was already following the Comics Unlimited account and saw the God of Grind account as well.
Aha. Yeah, sometimes you don't know who you're following. It's like so much stuff goes by. It's like, yeah.
Also, we have different names for different places.
Yeah. That happens. I usually use my name, Jared Osborne, or Art by Osborne. But you know what's funny?
I have a very common name, so I can't use my name unless I had something.
Right. I have to be an early adopter in order to get my name, which I have been.
Yeah. Apparently, if people search my name on YouTube, they find a Brazilian MMA fighter.
Like on TikTok, I forget what my name was, but I tried to change because I can't use Jared Osborne on TikTok. I wasn't early enough. So I tried to use Art by Osborne, and that was taken too. And I went to look at the other one, and it's like there's an Art by Osborne TikTok account with nothing on it. No P. And I'm like, did I set this up a long time ago and forget? So I'm like trying to enter all my various emails in it to see if it was actually me who set that up. But I wasn't able to. I'm like,
Oh, Art by Jared Osborne there.
But I think you can find me and Jared Osborne. Or I think I might have made it Art by Jared Osborne. You're right. I may have made that my handle. I like the bumpy guy. Lots of holes, lots of old heavy metal, and Miracle Man tonight. Oh, okay. Bumpy guy on feature. He liked.
When people in the comics community start talking about music, I can never join in because a lot of people are either into old rock or old metal.
I think he made Heavy Metal Magazine though, not the music.
But I think he talks about metal in one of these.
Maybe he does. I don't know. I'm not a metal person, so
yeah, because nobody liked I liked when I was a kid because I'm an electronic music person. So
I was mostly a prog rock kid.
I'm trying to convince people that Milli Vanilli was actually a good music project, even though the artists weren't the real ones. Because
we had this discussion a long time ago when Scott and Tim were on. They're both heavy metal guys. We were both like, never heard it, don't like it. Like, what?
Because the Milli Vanilli producer was also the Boney M producer.
I do have the metal hair. That brings me to a story of ex-Marvel editor Zena Zarfin, who also was an editor at High Times, and I think some music magazines. She's a real metalhead. Goes to really nice person too. Goes to metal and shows all the time still. And this is in the 90s at Marvel. And like she was an editor there, so I was in the bullpen. We used to talk all the time because we did that at Marvel, editors in the bullpen. So one day,
look who's back.
Who's back? Gene Paul, Ace Peter, holy crap. How are you doing, sir? So one time Xena starts talking to me about metal. And I'm like, and like Dave Sharp, who we mentioned as the letterer before, he's a big metal head too. So he was there talking. And I'm like, no, I'm like, I'm not a metal fan. She's like, what do you mean? I'm like, I don't listen to heavy metal music, don't like it. And
But you have the metal hair in the
she
metal.
tilted her head at me and went, well, why do you have long hair? And Dave just started. But it was funny. From that day on, she never treated, like when she found out I wasn't metal, she, however much she liked me, went down a notch.
Yeah.
Well, that was just well, why do you have long hair?
Yeah, the thing is, people don't really get why I would like electronic dance music because I dress in polo shirts.
Ah.
So I'm not the type of guy. And I don't like going clubbing, never did. I like listening
to music.
House music on the radio. And I'm a fan of Jean-Michel Jarre and Kraftwerk.
I never liked EDM. What I do like some of, I found years ago I liked it, is trance music, but trance music with vocals.
Okay, yeah, so that's the commercial type.
Yeah, that's the only type of like electronic dance music I like. Sure. Give me vocals, and because I want, once again, this is back in the 90s. I'm kind of all over the map in music liking. But one of my friends was like, what kind of music do you like? And I'm like, I don't know. And I put on a mixtape. And she was like, oh, songs you can sing to. And I was like, yeah. You know what? That probably is, because I respond to the lyrics a lot. Mm-hmm. So songs you can sing along to is kind of my, no matter what the genre is, that's kind of the type of music I like in that genre. Mm-hmm. Even trance music.
Yeah, but I do like trance music, and there was a period when I was all into Paul Van Dyke and DJ Quicksilver and Nalin and Kane, those guys from Germany and Belgium. But I was always more into house because house was also my gateway into actual good disco instead of hearing about the Bee Gees, because the Bee Gees ruined disco. And then from disco you go into funk and soul and jazz. And whenever I like to listen to jazz, I like to listen to those experimental types who do you know, the good thing about a jazz concert, you know, that song was recorded in 2 minutes. It's a 2 minute and 10 seconds in the album, but when it's played live, it's like 17 minutes.
I also like Philip Glass, John Cage, and minimalism, which brings me right into, I like holy minimalism a lot too. I don't know if you ever heard that, but it's a weird genre that developed, I think, in Europe years ago. The whole concept behind minimalism is you find a small pattern of music and repeat it, and it builds up into this whole sort of thing. And holy minimalism got its, you know, it wasn't trying to be minimalist, but it started out with churches in Europe and choirs, and they'd use the concepts of minimalism and start out with a little piece of music that the choir would sing, and they'd repeat and you build on the pattern and repeat it, and until it breaks into this huge choral thing. So that's another genre that I discovered like 15 years ago that I really liked. Holy minimalism.
And really, you know, when there was a period when there was a weird hybrid of techno and house called tech house that kind of made me lose interest in minimal house, and minimal techno started right after that, and it's boring.
The music I like best sounds like two robots fighting over a live monkey.
So dubstep.
Yeah, you would like the fall. Brian Eno, Robert Miles. Yeah, I like Brian Eno. I like ambient music, tough too. I got into that stuff, and then music for airports.
The first Robert Miles album is very melodic. It was that phase of melodic trance that got trance into the radio. But the second album has more ambient music, and the third album is more experimental. So it's got a lot of stuff that's almost noise. Well, I think Comic Crack would disagree with me, but it doesn't. By the time you get to Robert Miles's third album, it doesn't look like the first one at all. So it wasn't going to get any airplay, and I think the fans were disappointed. It's not like Fateless, because Fateless got famous at the same time as Robert Miles, but they kept the same style going until they disbanded. And
God of Grind says, I like my metal, but love all kinds of music. Dig blues, prog, jazz. Yeah. And no, it's funny. That just reminded me, seeing I love metal, was Dave Sharp, who I mentioned before, longtime comic letterer, who I worked with in the bullpen, big metal head, was always like, it's okay for you not to like metal. We prefer it when people don't like metal.
yeah, don't infect our scene with your normalness.
The Fall, that brings back old memories. The Residents, were they the ones who sing, "Here I come, Constantinople. I am coming, Constantinople. Here I come. Hello, GPAP."
You get a metal, you get a metal fan all riled up. You remind them that Michael Bolton used to do metal before famous "When a Man Loves doing a cover of "When a Man Loves a Woman."
Listen, we lost an OG today, Collector Stuff, AK Monty, here on YouTube. Did he just quit or did he die? Holy cow, we lost one. I was never a musical guy. I sort of fit into 90s high school atmosphere. I just chose The Fall as my obscure group. It took me far.
Mm.
Well, I'm getting dizzy tired. So Paulo must be real tired. We should wind up for the evening.
I don't know. Now that I don't have a regular job, I can. I don't feel tired in the same way anymore. I'm writing for the car magazine this week, but I like writing for the car magazine, so it's different.
Yeah, a regular job tired is tough.
Yeah,
Passed away. He was sick the last few years, unfortunately. Oh, that's too bad. Oh crap! I loved Monty. He was sick. I also pointed out another comic book person that died. We talked about it. The Golden Age artist, Lily Renee, passed away today, or this recently, at 101 years of age. Well, that's too bad. Well, everybody have a good night, and we will catch you guys next week. We'll get to hear about what movie Wilson went out and watched.
We'll have to grill him about it.
Yeah.
So have a good one out there.
Good night, everybody.